Hey guys, tonight, we're going on a different kind of journey, not into the dark corners of history, but into its quietest, most patient depths. Tonight, we're going to listen. We're going to listen to the whisper of the earth, the hum of ancient waters, and the rustle of a grain that has shaped civilizations for millennia. Before we begin, just take a moment to settle in. Dim the lights if you can. Maybe light a candle or turn on a fan for that soft, almost imperceptible background hum, a gentle white noise to cradle your thoughts. Find that comfortable spot. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let the day's chatter fade into the soft edges of your memory. And let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from and what time it is for you. Maybe even tell me what you are grateful for tonight. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and if these stories bring you a little peace. We're just here to share a moment, to slow down, and to listen to the very, very old stories the world has to tell. So, let's ease into tonight's journey together, into the gentle, enduring narrative of Subin the Rice Whisper. Imagine, if you will, that the world outside has faded. The harsh edges of electric light have softened, and the insistent buzz of modern life has receded into a distant echo. What remains, at least for a moment, is only the cool, quiet embrace of the night. You are standing, or perhaps you are simply being, at the very edge of an ancient world, a world where time moved at the pace of flowing water and unfolding leaves. The air around you is still, heavy with a damp, earthy scent, a fragrance that speaks of rich soil and living water, a subtle perfume of fertility and growth. Above, the moon hangs, a silent, watchful eye, a pearlescent disk against the velvet canvas of the sky, casting its light over an expanse of water that stretches out before you, seemingly without end. This isn't a violent, glaring light, not the assertive beam of a flashlight, but something altogether softer, more ethereal, a gentle cascade of silver. It's a milky luminescence, a diffused glow that transforms the familiar into the mysterious, blurring the lines between earth and sky. The moonbeams don't illuminate so much as they void paint. The landscape in shades of silver, deep indigo, and the softest charcoal. Each ripple, each whisper of wind across the surface, catches this lunar light, turning the vast expanse of water into a shimmering, breathing canvas, a living mirror reflecting the silent ballet above. The rice paddies lie still, utterly serene, like polished panes of obsidian, mirroring the sky above with an uncanny, almost mystical fidelity. The surface of the water is a dark, glassy expanse, so smooth it seems almost solid, reflecting the moon's full, round face with an almost perfect clarity, a pristine image of celestial beauty. But it's not a static reflection, not a frozen photograph. No, it breathes, it shifts. With every infinitesimal breath of the night, every subtle tremor in the air, the moon's image on the water wavers, elongates, then gathers itself back into a perfect orb, only to stretch and distort again in a slow, elegant motion. It's like watching an ancient, silent film unfold before your very eyes, where the only actors are light and liquid, engaged in an eternal, gentle dance of transformation and surrender. This interplay of light and dark, of still water and shifting reflection, creates a profoundly hypnotic effect, pulling your gaze deeper, further into the scene, into a meditative state where time seems to lose all meaning. The water itself seems alive, a vast, dark eye gazing back at the heavens, its surface a testament to the quiet power of reflection and repose. It whispers of secrets held within its depths, of stories absorbed over millennia, patiently awaiting their retelling. Occasionally, just barely audible above the profound silence that blankets the landscape, a frog lets out a croak. It's not a jarring sound, not an urgent cry or a loud exclamation designed to break the spell. Rather, it's a soft, resonant thrum, a low, liquid utterance that seems to rise not just from the amphibian's throat, but from the very depths of the earth itself, a guttural pulse of life. One croak, then silence, a profound pause that absorbs the sound entirely. Then another, a little further away, and another as if in a quiet, leisurely conversation with the vast emptiness and stillness of the night. Each sound is a tiny bell tolling in the profound darkness, a soft, natural chime marking the quiet passage of moments, reminding you that even in this deep stillness, life continues, vibrant and unseen, teeming beneath the surface of the water and within the muddy banks. The croaks aren't meant to disturb. They are simply a part of the intricate, ancient tapestry of this moonlit world, a rhythmic punctuation in the grand, unfolding quietude. They whisper of unseen life beneath the surface, of ancient instincts, of the unhurried pulse of nature, and of the perpetual, gentle cycle of being that defines this wetland realm. They are the subtle guardians of the night, their voices weaving a comforting, natural melody into the vast silence, a profound and ancient serenade to the moon. A late evening breeze, almost imperceptible, a mere ghost of a breath, stirs the surface of the water. It's not a gust, not a sudden rush of air, but a sigh, a gentle drawn out exhalation that barely disturbs the air around you, a soft exhalation of the world itself. And as it passes, it creates the slightest of ripples on the water's dark, mirrored surface. These aren't aggressive waves or chaotic undulations that crash and foam. Instead, they are delicate, concentric circles, expanding outwards from some unseen point, almost reluctantly catching the moonlight and breaking its perfect silver sheet into 1,000 tiny shimmering fragments, like a scattering of diamonds. They move with an elegant slowness, expanding, intermingling with their neighbors, creating ephemeral patterns that dance across the water, then gently dissolving, disappearing back into the smooth expanse, leaving the surface calm and whole once more, ready to be touched by the next subtle breath of wind. Each ripple is a fleeting thought, a momentary disturbance in the mirror, like calm quickly absorbed back into the greater tranquility, a testament to the transient beauty of the moment. They are ephemeral brushstrokes on the dark canvas, highlighting the quiet movement, the subtle, constant reshaping of the world by forces both seen and unseen. They remind us that even profound stillness contains within it the potential for gentle, graceful motion, an enduring rhythm of subtle change. In the distance, barely visible against the darker, solid mass of trees that ring the paddies like ancient guardians, stands the silhouette of a scarecrow. It is a lonely figure, etched against the pale, diffused wash of the moonlit sky, a silent sentry observing the sleeping fields. Not menacing, not frightening, not a figure of terror, but merely present, a quiet witness to the endless cycle of growth. Its arms are outstretched, a gesture of eternal vigilance, or perhaps simply a silent accepting embrace of the night, of the vast open sky above. It stands there, a guardian of the quiet fields, a sentinel of the sleeping grains, a silent, unmoving guardian. Its form is indistinct, shadowy outline blending almost seamlessly with the deeper shadows cast by the distant foliage. It offers a sense of protective watchfulness without intruding upon the scene's overwhelming peacefulness. A comforting presence that doesn't demand attention. This figure, motionless and still, adds another layer to the quietude, reinforcing the idea of a world that is not entirely devoid of human touch, yet remains deeply immersed in its natural, ancient rhythms. The scarecrow is a testament to human presence, to human endeavor, yet its very stillness amplifies the profound absence of human sound or activity, blending into the larger silence. It is a symbol of patient waiting, of the slow cycles of growth and harvest, all under the serene, silent gaze of the moon, a silent observer of all that has been and all that will be. This, then, is a world of absolute quiet, a hush so profound it seems to absorb all sound, to drink it in, leaving only a deep, resonant stillness, a silent hum that vibrates deep within the soul. It isn't an empty quiet, not a void, but a full one, brimming with the subtle energies of life unfolding in slow motion, a silent symphony of growth. This is the kind of quiet that invites slumber, the quiet that lulls the mind into a state of profound relaxation, letting go of all tension and worry. It is a silence so complete, so enveloping, that it feels ancient, as though it has been waiting for you patiently, for countless eons, a timeless space of peace. The air is still, save for the faintest stirrings that are more felt than heard. The light is soft, never harsh or intrusive. The sounds are distant, always gentle, almost dreamlike. Everything here conspires to soothe, to quiet the racing thoughts, to dim the frantic pace of the world, to bring you into a state of deep repose. It's a quiet that welcomes you, that cradles you, allowing your consciousness to drift, weightless, on its calm surface, slowly descending into the embrace of sleep. This scene is an invitation, a silent beckoning into a realm where the oldest stories are told not with words but with atmosphere, with the simple, profound beauty of a moonlit night over water, a soft, ancient lullaby for the soul. As your eyes gently close, or perhaps as they remain half-lidded, gazing into the soft, comforting darkness behind your eyelids, let the visual fade. Allow the image of the moonlit paddies to dissolve, not into nothingness, but into a feeling, a sensation, a gentle memory that lingers at the edges of your awareness. Now, let your awareness drift. Let it become attuned, not to the sights, not to the grand panoramas, but to the whispers, to the very subtle invitations of sound that linger in this ancient, peaceful landscape. It's like stepping from a brightly lit room into a darkened one, where your other senses begin to sharpen, to take over. Listen closely beyond the gentle, rhythmic thrumming of the frog, beyond the almost imperceptible stir of the evening breeze across the water. There are other sounds. They are not loud, not insistent, not demanding of your attention. They are deeply woven into the very fabric of this place, so much so that they might easily escape a casual ear, blending seamlessly into the background. You have to lean in metaphorically with your consciousness, with your innermost ear, and allow them to emerge from the background hum of silence, to rise slowly into your perception. Can you hear it? The almost imperceptible murmur of water making its way patiently through an irrigation channel. It is not the thunderous roar of a powerful river, not the dramatic crash of a waterfall. This is water on a mission of quiet sustenance, a gentle, deliberate journey. It flows not with urgency, not with haste, but with a deliberate, unhurried grace, a steady current that speaks of ancient purpose, a soft, continuous twain shesh, as it brushes against the earthen banks, worn smooth by countless millennia of flowing water, a barely audible singlug as it finds a tiny imperfection in the channel bed, a gentle sindlet lappy as it meets the main body of the paddy water, a soft kiss of liquid meeting liquid. This is the sound of life, giving liquid patiently, ceaselessly moving, nourishing the fields with a steady, ancient rhythm, a constant vital pulse. It is a sound that has echoed through these landscapes for thousands upon thousands of years, a constant, soothing lullaby of cultivation, a timeless melody of sustenance. The water doesn't rush, it meanders, it permeates. It performs its vital function with an understated elegance, a quiet efficiency that ensures life's continuity. It speaks of the deep connection between humanity and the earth, of the careful channeling of nature's bounty, all done with a quiet respect, a patient understanding of the land's needs. This sound is the very breath of agriculture, a soft exhalation of nourishment, an endless cycle of giving and receiving. And then there is the rustling, the soft, papery friction of rice leaves against one another. It's not the harsh, brittle crackle of dry autumn leaves underfoot, nor the violent thrashing of tree branches in a furious storm. This is a delicate, almost a musical sound, a gentle whispering, a collective sigh, a soft, continuous sizz, says see, as one slender, supple blade brushes against another, a whispery shiver, as 1,000 leaves respond in unison to the faintest, most subtle stir of air. Each individual leaf, a living entity, contributes its minute voice to this collective sigh, this delicate symphony of growth, a chorus of green vitality. Imagine the countless tiny interactions, the almost invisible dance of green foliage, each movement creating a minute sound that, when multiplied across an entire field, becomes a pervasive, comforting murmur, a gentle hum that fills the air. It is the sound of thousands upon thousands of tiny engines of life, tirelessly converting sunlight into sustenance, into the very essence of existence, doing so with a quiet efficiency that borders on the miraculous. This rustling is the breath of the plant itself, a continuous living sound that reminds you of the vibrant, tireless energy contained within the calm green exterior of the paddy. It's the sound of quiet persistence, of resilience, of a deep and steady engagement with the elements, a soft testament to life's enduring power. And beneath all of this, if you listen very, very closely, if you truly attune your inner ear, you might catch the low, almost subterranean hum of insects, busy in the rich, dark soil beneath the water. It is not a buzzing swarm, not an aggressive chirp that pierces the quiet. Instead, it is a deep, continuous vibration, a soft, almost imperceptible moom that rises from the earth itself, a gentle thrumming from the underworld. This is the quiet industry of unseen creatures, tunneling, foraging, living out their tiny, vital lives in the dark, fertile embrace of the soil, performing their essential, hidden work. These are the unsung heroes of the ecosystem, the silent partners in the grand project of life, their presence a vital component of the Earth's fertility. Their low murmurs are like the very heartbeat of the land, a continuous, almost primal pulse that underlies all other sounds, a constant reminder of the unseen life that thrives beneath our feet. They speak of the incredible, unseen biodiversity that teems beneath the surface, a miniature world of tireless activity that supports the visible world above, a vast, intricate web of life. This subterranean hum is a testament to the richness and depth of the earth, a soft, reassuring reminder of the interconnectedness of all living things, of the quiet, tireless work that goes on day and night, ensuring the continuation of life. These sounds soothing. The patient flow of water, the gentle rustle of leaves, the deep hum of the soil's tiny inhabitants. They are more than just noises. They are echoes. They are whispers. They are the ancient language of this land, spoken not with words, not with human utterances, but with the very rhythms of life itself. These subtle, natural melodies carry something profound, something incredibly old, something that resonates with the deepest parts of our being. They carry a story, a very, very old story, a story that has been unfolding patiently, relentlessly for millennia, long before recorded history, before human language as we know it. It is a story not of grand battles or towering monuments, not of kings and empires, but of quiet persistence, of slow transformation, of an enduring symbiotic relationship between a plant, a landscape, and the people who learn to listen, to observe, to adapt. It's a story woven into the very fabric of the earth, whispered by the wind through the leaves, carried by the slow, unceasing current of water, and hummed by the unseen life in the soil. These are the sounds of time itself, moving slowly, deliberately, telling a tale of beginnings, of adaptation, of quiet evolution, a profound saga of life's unwavering journey. They are an invitation to delve deeper, to listen beyond the surface, to understand the patient epic hidden within the mundane, the miraculous within the ordinary. And so we begin. Our story starts not with a grand discovery, not with a sudden revelation or a momentous invention, but with a humble beginning. Before the paddies shimmered under the moon, before the channels carried their life, giving flow, before the rice whispered its ancient secrets, there was simply a plant. A simple, unassuming plant without name or renown, or protagonist. The true star of our story was not a majestic oak or a vibrant, attention-grabbing rose. It was a modest, almost unremarkable kind of weed. Imagine, if you will, the vast, ancient wetlands that once stretched across much of what we now call Asia, a boundless expanse of green and water, a landscape of shifting marshes, slow, moving rivers that meandered without urgency, and countless shallow pools that shimmered under the primeval sun. In this rich, teeming environment, amidst a riot of reeds and sedges and 1,000 other green things, grew a slender, unassuming grass. This was the wild ancestor of all rice, Oryza rufipagan, a plant so ordinary, so deeply embedded in its natural habitat, that it likely went unnoticed by all but the most observant eyes, those attuned to the subtle rhythms of the land. It had no name, no special distinction, no particular importance to the ecosystem it inhabited. It was simply Samplai the Rowdy, one more thread in the intricate, verdant tapestry of the wild, a silent, inconspicuous participant in the grand drama of nature. It didn't stand out. It simply blended in, a quiet presence in a world teeming with life, a testament to the quiet power of simple existence. Picture it, a plant with delicate, almost impossibly thin stems, reaching perhaps a meter or so into the humid, warm air. Not robust, not woody like a tree, but supple, bending easily with every passing breeze, swaying with a gentle grace. These stems were a pale, muted green, blending seamlessly with the surrounding marsh vegetation, camouflaged within the abundant greenery. They were unassuming, almost fragile in their appearance, yet possessed a quiet tenacity, rooted firmly in the soft, muddy soil beneath the shallow, still water. There was no grandeur to its posture, no bold statement in its form or color. It simply existed, elegantly poised between the earth and the sky, a quiet testament to the pervasive power of life finding its way. Its leaves were long and narrow, a slightly deeper green than its stalks, almost indistinguishable from the other wild grasses and reeds that grew in such abundance around it. They caught the light, sometimes with a subtle sheen, a fleeting moment of brilliance, but mostly they just melted into the background, providing texture to the verdant landscape, a silent, unassuming part of the wetland vista. And at the very tip of these slender stalks, if you looked very, very closely, if your gaze was discerning enough to pick out the minute details, you would find its precious cargo, its grains. But they were sparse, not the heavy, bountiful, tightly packed heads of modern cultivated rice, brimming with a promise of abundance, but scattered individual grains, nestled within tiny, delicate husks. They were small, almost insignificant, often barely larger than a speck of dust, a tiny, unassuming package, yet each held the complete genetic blueprint for an entire new plant, a perfect miniature replica of its parent. The grains were not tightly packed together, not clustered for easy collection, but rather loosely arranged, almost reluctantly clinging to their parent stem, ready to depart at a moment's notice. There was no promise of an abundant harvest here, no overflowing yield for human hands to gather. This was a plant designed for dispersal, for scattering its progeny far and wide across the wetland, rather than concentrating them for easy collection. Its entire strategy for survival was rooted in this sparseness, this quiet, unassuming distribution across the vastness of the landscape. One of the most defining characteristics of this wild ancestor, a trait that would prove both a considerable challenge and paradoxically, a profound blessing for our distant forebears, was its inherent tendency to shed its grains with the slightest provocation. This process, known as shattering, was fundamental to its survival. A gentle gust of wind, a brushing animal moving through the marsh, or even its own natural maturation process, the perfect moment of ripeness would cause the ripe grains to cinch and shatter from the plant, detaching easily and falling effortlessly to the ground or into the shallow water below. It was an ingenious survival mechanism, ensuring the widespread dispersal of seeds and the continuation of its lineage, its progeny spreading far and wide without any external help. But for anyone hoping to collect these grains for sustenance, this shattering characteristic was a formidable, almost exasperating obstacle. Imagine trying to gather something that actively resists being gathered, that releases its treasures into the wild at the mere whisper of a touch, at the slightest vibration. The grains didn't wait patiently, they departed with a quiet autonomy. They were free, spirited, abandoning their parent plant as soon as they were ready, eager to find their own place in the moist earth, to germinate and begin anew. This wild rice didn't offer itself up. It released itself, scattering its future with a careless, almost elegant grace, a silent dance of dispersal across the primordial landscape. This shedding was its ancient way, a millennia-old strategy for propagating its kind without any need for human intervention, a perfect adaptation to its wild environment. It was a plant that lived on its own terms, distributing its genetic heritage across the vast wetlands with quiet efficiency, a master of self-propagation. So, this wild rice, this unassuming weed, was not a centerpiece, not a focal point of the ecosystem. It was a thread, a faint hue in the vibrant tapestry of its environment. It mingled with the reeds, shared its space with water lilies and countless other aquatic plants, and blended into the verdant backdrop of ancient Asia, a quiet participant in the grand ecological ballet. There was nothing particularly striking about it, nothing that cried out for attention or special recognition. It was simply a part of the vast, intricate wilderness, one of many, many plants making its way through life, quietly thriving, quietly reproducing, quietly shedding its seed into the rich, wet earth. It was a plant of subtle strength, of quiet resilience, unremarkable to the untrained eye, yet holding within its slender form the entire potential for a future civilization, for feeding billions. It was an unsung hero, waiting patiently in the shadows of prehistory, its quiet life playing out day by day, season by season, a silent prelude to the monumental transformation it would one day undergo at the hands of humanity. It was the epitome of an everyday plant, thriving in its niche, completely unaware of the profound impact it would eventually have on billions of lives, quietly biding its time in the ancient Asian wetlands, a testament to the slow, patient unfolding of life's grand design. Its existence was a low hum in the background, a soft green blur in the landscape, yet within its simple biology lay the seeds of a global staple, a world-shaping force, destined to be coaxed from its wild independence into a partnership with humanity, forever changing the course of human history. 10,000 years ago, long before the hurried footsteps of modern life, the land that cradled the lower and middle reaches of the mighty Yangtze River existed in a state of profound, untouched stillness. This was a realm defined by its breath, a vast, living lung of the earth, perpetually inhaling and exhaling a soft, humid air. Imagine, if you will, this ancient canvas, a tapestry woven from endless shades of green, perpetually moistened, eternally dreaming. The air itself was thick, a velvet blanket of warmth, so heavy with moisture that it often condensed into a fine, ethereal mist that clung to everything. This wasn't merely a morning fog that dissipated with the sun's ascent. No, this was often a pervasive, gentle shroud, lingering through the day, softening the edges of the world, blurring the lines between earth and sky, obscuring the distant trees in a hazy, benevolent embrace. This cradle of life was a labyrinth of waterways, a dense, intricate network of rivers, streams, and countless nameless rivulets, all murmuring their timeless stories as they snaked across the landscape. The water moved with an unhurried grace, never rushing, always finding its path, carving gentle hollows and filling quiet depressions. These waterways were not merely conduits for water. They were arteries teeming with life, reflecting the perpetual overcast skies, their surfaces often dappled with the shadows of passing clouds or the delicate patterns of emergent aquatic plants. The land was saturated, a vast, sprawling wetland, where the boundaries between solid ground and liquid expanse were fluid, ever shifting, endlessly renegotiated by the slow, patient hand of water. Here, in this warm, perpetually damp embrace, life flourished in an exuberant, untamed symphony. Towering trees, their roots anchored deep within the soft, yielding earth, reached skyward, their ancient branches draped with mosses and ferns, forming a verdant canopy that filtered the sunlight into dappled, shifting patterns on the forest floor. Below, a riot of undergrowth thrived, broad-leaved plants, delicate ferns, and thickets of reeds that swayed with a barely perceptible whisper in the humid air. The ground was a rich, dark loam, perpetually moist, giving off an earthy scent that was both primal and deeply comforting, a smell that spoke of decomposition and regeneration, of life and death intertwined in an endless cycle. Beneath the surface of the slow-moving rivers, countless fish swam, their scales glinting occasionally as they breached the surface, creating barely audible ripples that expanded outwards in perfect fleeting circles. Along the banks, amphibians of every conceivable size and hue sang their guttural choruses, their calls echoing through the misty air, forming a constant, low drone that was as much a part of the landscape as the rustling leaves. Insects, myriad and diverse, buzzed and hummed, their tiny lives weaving an intricate, almost invisible network of sound and movement. Dragonflies with their iridescent wings darted over the water's surface, swift and silent, their brief existence a blur of motion against a backdrop of timeless stillness. Frogs, plump and patient, waited on lily pads, their occasional croaks puncturing the pervasive quiet, only to be absorbed again by the damp, sound-absorbing atmosphere. Higher in the canopy, a myriad of birds flitted and sang, their calls sometimes clear and melodious, sometimes soft and tentative, but always blending into the overall murmur of the environment. Egrets, pristine white against the greens and grays of the wetlands, stood sentinel in shallow waters, their stillness an ode to patience. Kingfishers, flashes of brilliant blue and orange, would dive with a sudden, precise plunge, disappearing briefly into the water before emerging, sometimes with a struggling catch in their beaks. Small mammals, shy and largely unseen, rustled through the undergrowth, their movements so subtle they left no discernible trace, only a momentary tremor in the ferns. This was a world untouched by the sharp edges of human civilization, a primeval garden where the pace of life was dictated by the sun's slow journey across the sky, the moon's quiet phases, and the gentle, insistent rhythm of the rains. The air was always heavy with the perfume of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the sweet, delicate fragrance of wild blossoms, a complex olfactory tapestry that constantly shifted with the breeze. The sounds were muted, softened by the omnipresent humidity, creating an acoustic environment that was both dense and tranquil, a perfect lullaby for the silent, patient growth that was occurring everywhere, unnoticed, unhurried. In this vast, verdant expanse, amidst the reeds and grasses that fringed the countless waterways, our protagonist, the wild ancestor of modern rice, grew. It was merely one unassuming green shoot among countless others, its presence no more remarkable than a single raindrop in a vast ocean. Yet it was here, in this ancient, watery sanctuary, that its extraordinary journey would begin, slow and silent, like the unfolding of a forgotten dream. The very air seemed to breathe with an ancient knowing, each droplet of mist holding a secret, each ripple on the water a testament to the passage of time, flowing on undisturbed for countless millennia. Within this serene, untouched grandeur of the ancient Yangtze wetlands, our distant ancestors moved, their lives intertwined with the rhythm of the natural world. These were not the farmers of later ages, nor the builders of cities, but skilled foragers, intimately attuned to the subtle shifts of their environment, their existence a delicate dance with the wilderness. Their days were spent in the relentless, yet often quiet pursuit of sustenance. They understood the language of the forest and the marsh, knew where the juiciest berries grew, where the tastiest roots lay hidden beneath the soil, and which animals would offer a fleeting, precious meal. Their eyes, accustomed to discerning patterns in the chaotic green, scanned the landscape not for grand revelations, but for the countless small opportunities that collectively ensured their survival. The encounter with wild rice, then, was not a dramatic moment of discovery, illuminated by a sudden flash of insight, nor was it the culmination of a deliberate search for a new staple. Instead, it was an incredibly slow, almost imperceptible process, woven into the very fabric of their daily routine, a gradual unfolding of awareness that spanned generations. Picture them, these ancestral figures moving through the waste, high grasses and reeds that dominated the wetland margins, their hands already accustomed to the feel of rough bark, smooth stones, and the delicate texture of edible leaves would reach out, instinctively collecting whatever appeared promising. They would pluck berries, dig for tubers, with rudimentary digging sticks made of hardened wood, and gather the seeds of various wild plants that offered energy and sustenance. Among these countless foraging expeditions, almost by accident, their fingers would brush against the slender stalks of the wild rice plants. These plants, unassuming and blending seamlessly with the myriad other grasses, did not announce their presence with vibrant colors or strong scents. They were simply there, part of the abundant backdrop. As they moved, sweeping their hands through the vegetation to gather other, more familiar resources, the small, elongated grains of wild rice would inevitably become part of their collection. Perhaps a handful of them would cling to the rough fibers of their makeshift carrying baskets, or mix in with a batch of other gathered seeds, destined for a simple meal. The act of collection itself was pragmatic and unthinking. There was no specific intention to harvest rice, as we understand it today. It was simply one more item in the general bounty of the marsh, another source of calories among many. A small cluster of wild rice grains, easily dislodged from its stem, might fall into a basket alongside water chestnuts, wild greens, or other cereal-like seeds. The sensation of these grains in their hands would have been familiar, yet subtly distinct from other seeds, a slightly different shape, a unique texture. But this difference would have been noted not with wonder, but with the quiet, practical assessment of a people focused solely on the immediate value of food. Over countless seasons, this incidental interaction repeated itself. The same foraging paths were trodden, the same marshy edges explored. Each time, a small amount of wild rice would be collected, sometimes deliberately, sometimes inadvertently. It would be brought back to their temporary camps, perhaps parched over a fire to remove some moisture, or ground coarsely with stone tools to make a rudimentary flour. The taste, though perhaps not as immediately appealing as a sweet fruit or a fatty piece of game, would have provided reliable energy, a consistent calorie source that could be depended upon when other foods were scarce. The ancient people were observing, not with the deliberate, systematic methods of a scientist, but with the immersive, holistic awareness of those whose lives depended on every subtle cue from their environment. They would have noticed that these particular seeds grew best in damp, watery places. They might have observed the cycles of its growth, the time it took from emerging shoot to mature grain. They would have learned through trial and error how best to process it to make it palatable. But these were not conscious experiments driven by a grand vision. These were the accumulated observations of generations, passed down through shared experience and unspoken knowledge, a slowly deepening understanding of one unassuming plant among many. There was no aha moment, no single pivotal discovery. Only the quiet, persistent accumulation of small interactions, each one a tiny thread in the vast, intricate tapestry that was slowly, imperceptibly, binding humanity to this wild ancestor of rice. Their engagement was one of a silent partnership, a shared journey on the landscape, with neither party fully aware of the profound future, shaping implications of their quiet coexistence. As the millennia unfolded, a subtle yet utterly transformative shift began to occur, not through grand human design, but through the patient, almost accidental interplay of nature's rules and human habits. This was the quiet genesis of domestication, a process so slow and gradual it lacked any heroic moments or conscious breakthroughs. It centered around a single, seemingly trivial characteristic of the wild rice plant: its tendency to shed its seeds. In its natural state, wild rice is incredibly efficient at self-propagation. When the grains ripen, they readily detach from the stalk, scattering across the soil or into the water, ensuring the next generation. A slight breeze, a passing animal, or even the subtle tremor of the earth could send a shower of seeds falling, ready to sprout and continue the cycle. This natural shedding, known as shattering, is a highly successful survival strategy in the wild. However, this very efficiency posed a challenge for our ancient ancestors. When they moved through the wetlands, gathering various wild grains and seeds, the easily shattering wild rice would slip through their fingers, much of it lost to the ground before it could ever reach their collection baskets. Imagine the frustration, not an angry frustration, but a quiet, resigned one, as they reached for a cluster of ripened grains, only for half of them to fall away at the slightest touch. Their hands would sweep through the stalks, collecting what they could, but a significant portion would always remain behind, out of reach, already scattered. This meant that, over time, the wild rice plants whose grains clung just a little bit longer, those that were slightly more reluctant to detach, were the ones most likely to be successfully harvested by human hands. These stubborn grains, which resisted immediate shattering, were the ones that made it back to the camps in greater numbers. They were the ones that survived the journey from marsh to hearth, held securely in woven containers or cupped hands. And crucially, it was these collected grains that were most likely to be consumed. Yes, but also, accidentally or incidentally, to be scattered near the human settlements. As early humans moved and lived, fragments of their harvest would inevitably fall to the ground near their temporary dwellings, or along their well-worn paths. When these fallen seeds sprouted, they grew in disturbed, nutrient-rich soil, perhaps already benefiting from human activity. The plants that grew from these non-shattering seeds were then, again, more likely to be harvested by the next generation of foragers, because, once more, Their grains clung a little longer, making them easier to collect. This process repeated, cycle after cycle, year after year for thousands of years. It was a selection process, driven not by intentional breeding, but by human convenience and the simple physics of gravity. Each time a human hand harvested rice, it was subtly, unknowingly, favoring the plants that had a slightly weaker shattering gene. The ones that held on were the ones that got a ride, so to speak, to a new, often more fertile, location near human habitation, or at least had their seeds carried to a spot where they could be intentionally, or semi-intentionally sown. The non-shattering trait, initially a random mutation, became increasingly common within the populations of wild rice that grew in close proximity to human activity. There were no geneticists among these ancient people, no understanding of alleles or heredity. They simply sought the most efficient way to gather food. Their actions were guided by pragmatism. If a cluster of grains was easier to pluck and bring home intact, it was preferred. The cumulative effect of these countless small preferences, stretched over an immense expanse of time, hundreds of generations, thousands of lifetimes, was a profound genetic shift. The trait for non-shattering, once rare, slowly became dominant in the populations of rice growing alongside humans. The wild, free-spirited grain, designed to launch its progeny into the wind, gradually learned to cling, to wait for the hand that would carry it. This was not a rapid evolution, but a glacial creep. Imagine the sheer volume of individual rice plants that lived and died, sprouted and shed over these 10 millennia. Each plant a small, silent experiment in survival. And within this vast, green ocean of life, a tiny fraction, a whispered mutation, allowed some grains to hold on just a little tighter. These were the grains that found their way into the human world, and through that interaction, their genes were propagated with greater success. The process was unhurried, almost imperceptible on a generational scale, yet utterly relentless over the long arc of history. It was the patience of the plant meeting the persistence of the human hand in a silent, unconscious pact that would forever alter the destiny of both. The grains held on, waiting for the human touch, and in that waiting, they slowly but surely became something new, something that would feed billions. The wild rice, having shown its quiet preference for clinging tightly to its grains, continued its patient dance with the changing seasons. Its favored home remained the low, wet places Sandy, the edges of slow-moving streams, the shallow depressions where rainwater lingered, the natural, ever-shifting dampness of the ancient landscape. It thrived where its roots could sink into perpetually moist soil, where the sun warmed the water just so, and where the gentle currents brought nutrients and carried away what was no longer needed. It was in these naturally hospitable pockets that the early inhabitants, their hands already familiar with the textures of the earth and the flow of water, began their first, almost imperceptible modifications. Imagine a small, sun-dappled clearing, not far from a winding river, where a particularly robust patch of these grain-bearing grasses grew. Perhaps a subtle dip in the land meant water collected there after the rains, creating a miniature, temporary pond that held its moisture longer than the surrounding ground. The people, observing this, their eyes trained by generations of keen attention to the nuances of their environment, would have noticed the flourishing life within these damp zones. Their footsteps, soft and rhythmic, might have pressed down the taller weeds around the wild rice, inadvertently creating tiny rudimentary boundaries. With tools no more sophisticated than a sturdy wooden stick, perhaps a sharpened stone, or even just their bare hardened hands, they might have begun to scratch at the edges of these natural depressions. A shallow groove, a faint line drawn in the mud, barely deeper than a fingertip fort. This was the beginning, not a conscious act of engineering, not a grand blueprint, but a simple, intuitive gesture. A gentle redirection, perhaps a small channel, no wider than an arm, was slowly extended from the main stream, a mere trickle encouraged to deviate from its path and seep into this chosen spot. The earth, softened by the persistent moisture, yielded to their persistent efforts, shifting beneath their touch. The goal, if it could even be called a goal in our modern sense, was not to create something new, but to gently extend and enhance what nature already provided, to prolong the wetness, to deepen the puddle, to make the edges a little clearer. They might have observed that when the water lingered, the rice grew taller, the stalks thicker, the grains more abundant. This wasn't science, it was an ancient, quiet conversation between human observation and natural response. Each small scoop of earth, each carefully placed stone, each subtle shift in the muddy bank contributed to a nascent pattern. The small, irregular depressions became slightly more defined, their perimeters a little firmer. Water, once prone to evaporating quickly or flowing away unpredictably, was now encouraged to remain, held by these newly formed, low-slung earthen lips. It was a delicate balance, a constant negotiation with the whims of the weather and the stubbornness of the soil. The water itself became a partner in this endeavor. Its slow movement, its quiet presence, shaped the nascent fields as much as human hands did. It carried fine silts, depositing them gently, slowly building up the floor of these proto-paddies. It reflected the sky, creating a calm, shimmering surface that would have caught the eyes of early foragers, a beacon of promise. Imagine standing at the edge of one such spot, your bare feet sinking into the cool, yielding mud, the water barely reaching your ankles, perhaps just above. The air hangs heavy with the scent of damp earth and growing green things. The sun, high overhead, warms your skin, and the occasional breeze causes a faint ripple across the surface of the water, disturbing the reflection of the clouds for just a moment before calm returns. These weren't fields as we know them. They were small, often irregular patches, perhaps no larger than a small clearing in the woods or the size of a single dwelling. Each one a testament to countless hours of patient, almost meditative work, a process less about brute force and more about subtle persuasion, coaxing the land to hold the water, to mimic the conditions that the wild rice already found so agreeable. The sounds would have been minimal, the soft slurping of mud as a foot was pulled free, the quiet scraping of a stick against hardened earth, the gentle gurgle of water being nudged into a new direction. No shouts, no clanking of metal, just the hushed symphony of effort and nature. This intimate, almost private relationship with the land, this subtle shaping of the environment, laid the foundation for something monumental without anyone involved knowing its future significance. The earliest of these managed plots would have been mere expansions of natural puddles, a gentle widening of a shallow basin, a slight deepening of a natural runoff. They weren't always successful. Some might have dried out too quickly. Others might have been washed away by a sudden flood. But the learning was iterative, cumulative, passed down not through written records, but through observed example, through muscle memory, through the shared understanding of the group. The rhythm of this work was tied directly to the rhythm of the seasons. The preparation of these small watery havens would precede the planting of the collected grains, a time of hopeful anticipation as the sun began its ascent in the sky, promising warmth and growth. The water, carefully guided, would fill these miniature basins, turning the dry earth into a soft, nutrient-rich bed. The surface, still and reflective, would often hold the sky, blurring the line between earth and firmament, creating a tranquil, almost sacred space for the fragile seeds to begin their journey. The shallow ditches at first were barely distinguishable from natural rivulets, but with repeated use, with the constant flow and gentle reshaping, they began to take on a more deliberate form. Like arteries carrying lifeblood, these channels brought the essential moisture from the rivers and streams to the small, prepared plots. The water didn't rush, it seeped, it trickled, it flowed with a quiet persistence, mirroring the patience of the people who guided it. Each small patch, once just a wild growth, now became a tiny, carefully tended garden, a place where the wild rice was given a slightly better chance, a slightly longer drink of water, a slightly more protected bed to grow. It was an embrace of the plant's inherent preferences, a gentle nudging rather than a forceful imposition. And in this embrace, the seeds of transformation were sown, watered, and patiently awaited. And so, this quiet journey of transformation began, not with a bang, not with a monumental discovery, but with the almost imperceptible hum of 10,000 years. A whisper, really, carried on the ancient winds, a soft murmur of ceaseless effort and incremental change. There are no heroes in this story, no names etched into stone, no grand epics sung around ancient fires about a single brilliant inventor. Only the vast, anonymous tapestry of human endeavor, woven thread by thread, generation after generation. Imagine this span of time stretching back further than recorded history, further than kings and empires, almost incomprehensibly long, 1,000 decades, 100 centuries. Each passing year, a cycle of planting, tending, harvesting, and gathering. Each year, a small choice, an unconscious selection. The seeds that fell too easily were left behind. The seeds that clung just a little bit longer, a little more stubbornly, were the ones gathered into baskets, the ones carefully saved, the ones planted again when the earth softened with the spring rains. This wasn't a project driven by explicit scientific understanding, but by the practical realities of survival. What was easier to collect? What yielded more grain for the effort? The simple answer, repeated countless times, slowly, gently, nudged the wild rice along a path of no return. It was an evolutionary drift, guided by the almost invisible hand of human need and human patience. Think of the sheer repetition, the bending backs, the calloused hands, the sun-baked skin. Every spring the earth prepared, the grains scattered. Every autumn the stalks gathered, the grains threshed, 1,000 times over, 10,000 times over. The same movements, the same expectations, the same quiet hopes whispered to the soil. The children who watched their parents perform these tasks would, in turn, teach their own children, not with formal lessons, but through the rhythm of life, the shared labor under the vast, indifferent sky. The changes in the plant itself were minuscule at first, a fraction of a millimeter difference in the strength of the abscission layer, the tiny joint that connected the grain to the stalk. A slightly denser cluster of grains on a panicle, a subtle shift in the timing of its ripening, making it more synchronized for a single, efficient harvest. These were not dramatic mutations, but slow, almost glacial adaptations, each one preserved and amplified by the consistent actions of human hands. The soundscape of domestication was not one of excitement or breakthrough, but of quiet, rhythmic persistence. The rustle of dry leaves underfoot, the gentle crackle of a small fire in the evening, the soft sigh of the wind through the tall grasses, the steady thud of pestle and mortar, husking the grains, the soft clinking of stones as tools were shaped and resharpened. These were the only monuments to this epochal transformation. The vastness of this timeline swallowed individual stories, individual efforts. A farmer in 8000 BC might have spent a lifetime patiently cultivating a patch of rice, seeing only the smallest improvements. Their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren and countless generations after them would continue this same work, unaware of the immense historical arc they were part of. Their lives were simply the daily struggle, the seasonal rhythm, the constant connection to the earth and its bounty. It is a testament to the power of accumulated small actions, like grains of sand forming a desert or drops of water eroding a mountain. These tiny repeated choices sculpted an entirely new form of life from its wild ancestor. The wild rice, with its inherent tendency to scatter its seeds widely for survival, gradually evolved into a plant that held its precious cargo close, waiting for the human hand to release it. This process wasn't always smooth. There would have been bad harvests, devastating floods, periods of drought, and times when the wild creatures claimed too much of the precious crop. Each setback would have forced adjustments, sharpened observations, refined techniques. But the fundamental pattern, the underlying goal, remained: to encourage the rice to yield more, to make it easier to gather, to secure a more reliable source of nourishment. The whisper of 10,000 years is the sound of resilience. It is the silent dialogue between human ingenuity and plant biology. It is the unwritten contract forged in the wet soils of ancient Asia, a promise of sustenance exchanged for care and cultivation. It's the story of how a small, unassuming grass became the cornerstone of civilizations, not through conquest or invention, but through patient, relentless, and utterly quiet coevolution. The very air itself, over these millennia, would have carried the subtle scent of drying rice stalks, the earthy smell of freshly turned soil, the sweet aroma of cooking grains. These weren't fleeting odors, but deeply ingrained, olfactory memories passed down through generations, becoming part of the very fabric of human existence in these regions. The taste of the grain, once a rare treat, became a familiar comfort, a constant presence, shaping dietary preferences and culinary traditions long before anyone thought to write them down. This long domestication, then, is a story without drama. It's a narrative of quiet persistence, of hands patiently working the soil, of eyes carefully observing the subtle changes, of mouths savoring the slightly more abundant harvest. It's a testament to the profound impact of countless ordinary lives, lived and forgotten, yet collectively shaping the very world we inhabit today. The whispers of those 10 millennia still echo in every grain, in every ripple of a paddy field, a silent reminder of our ancient, enduring partnership with this remarkable plant. Once the ancient hand began to gently guide the water, a new understanding emerged, a deeper appreciation for the ground itself. The wild rice loved consistency. It craved a stable sheet of water, not pockets and ridges. And so, the focus shifted from merely collecting water to meticulously preparing the earth to hold it evenly. This was the era of clearing and leveling, a chapter defined by unparalleled patience and a deep, almost spiritual connection to the soil. Imagine the primeval landscape, an entanglement of roots, ancient fallen logs slowly decaying into the earth, stubborn rocks embedded beneath the surface, and countless wild plants competing for space. The first task was clearing, not with powerful machines, but with the strength of human muscle and the simplest of tools. Hands would pull at thick vines, tearing them from the ground. Sturdy branches, perhaps sharpened by fire, would be used as crude shovels or levers to pry up tenacious roots. Large stones, perhaps unearthed by the digging for water channels, would be rolled away slowly, laboriously, often with the combined effort of an entire family or small community. The sound of clearing was a medley of soft rustles, the dull thud of a log being dragged, the occasional grunt of effort. The air would carry the scent of freshly disturbed earth, of broken roots, and the faint, sweet smell of damp decay. It was a slow, arduous process, one that demanded acute awareness of the landscape and an immense tolerance for repetitive, physical labor. Each root extracted, each stone moved, contributed to the slow transformation of wild land into arable ground. But clearing was only the beginning. The true art, the most painstaking and crucial step, was leveling water, that essential partner revealed every imperfection. A slight rise in the land meant the water would be too shallow, exposing young rice roots to the harsh sun. A slight depression meant the water would be too deep, drowning the delicate seedlings. The goal was a surface as flat and even as a placid pond on a windless day. The tools for this monumental task were deceptively simple. A heavy log, perhaps, dragged repeatedly across the moistened earth. A broad, flat piece of wood, resembling a modern rake without teeth, used to gently push and pull the mud. Or, most often, the bare, sensitive soles of human feet. Imagine the feeling of soft, yielding mud beneath your feet, the subtle shifting of earth as you press down, finding the high spots, feeling the hollows. The process would often begin with flooding the cleared area. A thin sheet of water, perhaps only a few inches deep, would be allowed to flow over the surface. Then, with an almost meditative focus, the farmers would wade into this shallow, muddy expanse. Their eyes, trained to minute detail, would observe how the water settled. Where it pooled too deeply, earth needed to be added. Where it thinned, soil needed to be gently removed and pushed to the lower spots. With their crude wooden implements, or more often their bare hands and feet, they would begin the slow, deliberate work of moving the mud. Scoop by scoop, push by push, dragging earth from a slightly elevated patch and depositing it into a depression. The mud, a viscous, pliable medium, offered resistance, but also yielded to persistence. It was a constant dance, a rhythmic shuffling and smoothing, until the water lay evenly, reflecting the sky like a perfect mirror. The effort was immense. Days, weeks, sometimes months could be spent on a single small plot, patiently coaxing the earth into submission. The muscles in the back would ache, the legs would grow heavy, the hands would be perpetually caked in mud. Yet there was a quiet satisfaction in the work, a visible transformation of the landscape under their care. Each perfectly leveled patch represented a victory of human will and ingenuity over the wildness of nature. The silence of this labor was profound. No shouts of command, no hurried movements. Only the soft slosh of water, the squelch of mud beneath feet, the quiet scrape of a wooden tool. It was a task that required full attention, a deep engagement with the physical world, a kind of moving meditation. The sun would track across the sky from dawn's faint glow to dusk's deep hues, while the slow, rhythmic work continued. The perfectly level surface was not just an aesthetic triumph, it was a functional necessity. It ensured that every single rice plant, from the center of the plot to its very edges, received the same amount of life-giving water. It maximized the efficiency of the land, allowing each precious grain to flourish without hindrance. It was the foundation upon which the entire rice-growing ecosystem would be built. Even today, in some remote corners of the world, you can still find echoes of this ancient practice. Farmers with simple tools and centuries of inherited knowledge will stand knee-deep in water, feeling the earth, guiding the mud, shaping their fields with the same patient precision that characterized their ancestors 10,000 years ago. The smell of wet earth, the feel of soft mud between the toes, the sight of a perfectly level water surface reflecting the clouds. These are sensory connections that span millennia, linking us to those ancient hands and their quiet, persistent labor. The preparation of the soil, therefore, was not merely a physical act. It was an act of profound respect for the plant that would nourish them, respect for the water that sustained it, and respect for the earth that offered its bounty. It was a silent pledge etched into the very surface of the land, a promise of careful stewardship and a testament to the enduring human capacity for patience and perseverance. The ground, once wild and untamed, was now a tranquil canvas, waiting for the green brushstrokes of life. The earliest channels, perhaps just shallow depressions worn by repeated footsteps, or the natural flow of rain, grew over centuries into more deliberate pathways. Imagine, if you will, the patient work of countless hands without the steel tools we now take for granted, without the blueprints of modern engineering. They used simple digging sticks, sharpened wood or flat stones, scraping away at the earth, loosening the soil inch by painstaking inch. The excavated earth was not discarded but carefully piled up along the sides, forming rudimentary dikes, low, humble embankments that whispered promises of containment. These were not grand walls but subtle ridges, shaped by human will and the ever-present understanding of water's gentle, yet insistent, power. The purpose was elegantly simple: to capture and direct the meandering flow of nearby rivers or the precious bounty of rainfall. To guide the water, not force it. The main channels, wide enough for a person to walk along their banks, snake through the nascent fields, their paths chosen with an intuitive wisdom that only comes from living intimately with the land. From these larger arteries, smaller, delicate feeder channels branched off, like veins spreading through a leaf, carrying life, giving moisture to individual plots. The water, a shimmering ribbon of silver under the sun, would flow slow and deliberate, a liquid whisper over the parched earth, soaking into the dry soil, awakening it. And then there were the tools designed to coax the water upwards, defying gravity for the sake of nourishment. The most iconic of these, the suagao, or what we might call a shaduf or well sweep, stood like a skeletal sentinel by the water's edge. Picture a tall, slender pole anchored at its base, acting as a pivot. From this pivot, a long wooden beam extended, balanced with exquisite precision. At one end, a heavy counterweight 40, a large stone or a basket filled with mud 30 hung down. At the other, suspended by a rope, a simple bucket or scoop, often made from woven bamboo or leather. The rhythm of the suagao was as old as time itself. A lone farmer, often bare-chested under the relentless sun, would grasp the rope attached to the bucket. With a slow, steady pull, the bucket would descend, dipping into the river or pond, filling with cool, clear water. The counterweight, designed to ease the labor, would then assist as the farmer guided the bucket upwards, its contents sloshing gently. With a final, graceful swing, the water would be emptied into a waiting channel, sometimes with a soft splash, sometimes with a quiet gurgle. This repetitive motion, a meditative dance between human strength and mechanical leverage, continued for hours, sometimes from dawn till dusk. Each pull, each lift, each pour, a tiny contribution to a vast agricultural tapestry. The sound of the sudiaga was a characteristic melody of the ancient rice fields. The creak of the wooden pivot, the gentle slap of water, the quiet sigh of effort from the operator. It was a sound that spoke of sustenance, of perseverance, of life, beyond the elegant simplicity of the suyagao. Other less elaborate, but equally vital, methods were employed. Farmers might simply scoop water in buckets, carrying them from the source to the thirsty fields, their shoulders developing powerful stoic muscles over years of such labor. Or, in slightly more advanced setups, simple wooden scoop wheels, powered by foot or hand, would rhythmically lift water. Each scoop a testament to human ingenuity in harnessing basic mechanics. Imagine the bare feet pressing down on the pedals of a foot-powered wheel, the constant, low hum of the mechanism, the rhythmic splash as the chain of scoops brought water cascading into the channels. As the water reached the prepared plots, it would spread slowly, silently, a thin, shimmering film across the carefully leveled earth. Each terrace, each small basin, was designed to hold just the right amount of water, a shallow pool where the young rice seedlings could thrive, mimicking the natural wetlands from which they originally sprang. The water was not allowed to stagnate. Small overflow channels and carefully placed stones ensured a continuous, gentle flow, preventing the buildup of harmful substances and providing fresh oxygen to the submerged roots. This controlled movement of water was an intricate ballet, choreographed by generations of farmers who understood the subtleties of hydrology better than any textbook could teach. They read the land, felt the soil, and observed the water, adjusting a small earthen dam here, clearing a leaf-clogged channel there, always maintaining that delicate balance. The construction of these irrigation systems was never a solitary endeavor. It demanded communal effort, the shared sweat and wisdom of entire villages. Children would learn from their parents helping to patch a dike, clear debris from a channel, or carry small loads of earth. Grandparents would sit on the banks, their eyes crinkled with age and experience, offering advice, pointing out subtle changes in the water's flow. It was a collective act of creation, a testament to human cooperation, and the profound understanding that their shared survival depended on this mastery of water. The channels became arteries of the community, connecting one family's plot to another, fostering a sense of interdependence and shared destiny. The very landscape itself was sculpted by this relentless pursuit of water management. What might once have been a wild, untamed marsh or a dry, unproductive plain was slowly, painstakingly transformed into a mosaic of shimmering fields, each bordered by its own low dike, each fed by its own delicate network of channels. The sounds that filled these landscapes were subtle, the constant, low gurgle of flowing water, the soft splash of a passing bird, the rustle of reeds on the banks. These were not loud, dramatic sounds, but the quiet, persistent melodies of a world shaped by human hands and the life-giving essence of water. These irrigation systems, refined and expanded over thousands of years, became the veins and arteries of civilization, allowing a single wild grass to become the foundation of empires and cultures. They laid the groundwork for a stable food supply, allowing communities to flourish, to build, to dream beyond the immediate struggle for survival. And all of it, built with earth and wood, sweat and patience, under the vast, indifferent sky, one gentle drop of water at a time. As the sun climbs higher, painting the water-filled fields with liquid gold, another essential partner emerges from the morning mists, the water buffalo. Its massive form, a silhouette against the rising light, moves with an ancient, unhurried grace. These magnificent creatures, with their dark, often mud-caked hides and their wide, sweeping horns, are not merely beasts of burden. They are integral members of the rice, farming family, silent partners in the centuries, old dance of cultivation. Their eyes, often described as gentle and knowing, hold a depth that speaks of generations spent in the rice paddies. A slight puff of steam might escape their nostrils in the cool morning air, a testament to their deep, steady breathing. The sound of the water buffalo in the field is a symphony of slowness and power. With each ponderous step, its hooves, broad and suited for the soft, yielding mud, create a satisfying squelch. A water parts around its powerful legs, churning the rich, dark soil beneath. When the plow is attached, a simple wooden implement with a metal share, the sound shifts. It becomes a rhythmic tear, a deep-throated gurgle as the share cuts through the soaked earth, turning over clods of mud, aerating the soil, preparing it to receive the delicate young rice seedlings. The farmer, often barefoot, walks steadfastly behind, one hand on the plow's handle, the other perhaps gently resting on the buffalo's flank, guiding it with a soft word or a subtle shift in direction. There is no shouting, no harsh commands, only a quiet, almost telepathic understanding that has developed over countless seasons. The buffalo's strength is immense, but it is applied with a calm, unwavering persistence. It does not rush, it does not complain. It simply pulls, step by slow step, across the vast expanse of the paddy. Hour after hour, under the blazing sun or through the soft drizzle of monsoon rain, it continues its task. The muscles ripple under its thick hide, a testament to its endurance. After plowing, the buffalo might be used for harrowing or puddling. Here, it drags a heavy wooden frame or a series of spikes across the field, further breaking up the soil, smoothing it, and mixing it thoroughly with the water to create the perfect, soft, silty bed for transplanting. The visual of a buffalo wading through a field, its body half submerged in water and mud, dragging the harrow is iconic of rice cultivation. The water spreads out in gentle waves from its powerful movements, reflecting the sky on shattered fragments. The bond between the farmer and the water buffalo is a quiet testament to shared labor and mutual respect. It is a relationship built not on words but on shared experiences, on the understanding of each other's needs and limitations. The farmer knows when the buffalo needs a rest, when it needs a drink from the cool channel, or when a quiet pat on its broad neck is needed. The buffalo in turn trusts its human companion, responding to subtle cues that an outsider might never perceive. It is a partnership that has shaped landscapes and sustained families for millennia. The smell of wet earth and the musky scent of the buffalo hang heavy in the air, a natural perfume of the paddies. Dragonflies dance above the water, and birds perch on the buffalo's back, a testament to the symbiotic relationship between beast, land, and man. Beyond its role in plowing and preparing the fields, the water buffalo contributes in other ways. Its presence helps to control weeds by grazing on them when the fields are fallow. Its dung enriches the soil, a natural fertilizer returning nutrients to the earth. In many communities, the buffalo is a prized possession, a symbol of wealth and prosperity, and a beloved member of the household. Children grow up playing near them, learning to respect their quiet power. Its silhouette, strong and stoic, is etched into the cultural memory of rice-growing regions, a constant reminder of the steady, unwavering effort required to bring sustenance from the earth. The very sound of its heavy breathing, the soft splash of its movements, is woven into the fabric of daily life, a reassurance that the work of feeding the world continues, slowly, patiently, year after year, under the watchful gaze of the quiet giant. It is a powerful yet gentle image, one that speaks of harmony and the deep, abiding connection between humans and the natural world they so carefully cultivate. From the wide, flat floodplains, our journey now ascends. The land begins to ripple, then swell, finally rising into undulating hills and steep mountainsides. Here, where flat ground is a precious scarcity, human ingenuity takes on a different form, a monumental challenge that results in some of the most breathtaking agricultural landscapes on Earth, the terraced rice fields. Imagine the sheer audacity, the generations of unwavering commitment required to transform a raw, untamed mountain slope into a series of carefully sculpted steps. Each one a miniature paddy, each one a mirror reflecting the sky. It is as if human hands sought to carve a stairway to heaven, not for ascent, but for sustenance. The genesis of terraced fields was born of necessity. As populations grew and fertile river valleys became saturated, people looked upwards to the slopes for new land to cultivate. But mountains present formidable obstacles, steep inclines, rocky soil, rapid runoff, and the ever-present challenge of water retention. Yet, with a tenacity that defies easy comprehension, ancient farmers began to chip away at these challenges. The work was arduous beyond measure, undertaken with the simplest of tools, picks crafted from wood or hardened metal hoes, baskets woven from bamboo or straw, and above all, human muscle and spirit. The process began with the careful selection of a suitable slope, ideally one that received ample sunlight and had a reliable water source higher up. Then came the laborious task of cutting. Imagine thousands of men and women, generation after generation, slowly, painstakingly, carving into the mountainside. They would dig, loosen the soil, and then pull it forward, creating a flat bench. The earth they removed was then used to build a retaining wall at the outer edge of this bench. These walls, often made of dry stacked stones fitted together with an almost artistic precision, or sometimes simply packed earth, were the backbone of the terraces. They held the precious topsoil in place, preventing it from being washed away by the monsoon rains. The sound of tools striking rock, the the rhythmic thud of earth being tamped down, the grunts of effort, echoed through the valleys for centuries. But carving a flat surface was only half the battle. Each terrace had to be perfectly level, a subtle, almost imperceptible gradient maintained across its surface to ensure that water would spread evenly and not simply rush off. This was achieved with an intuitive understanding of hydrostatics. Farmers would observe the flow of water, using simple water levels. See in perhaps a bamboo tube filled with water, or simply observing where a small pool would naturally settle sooty, to painstakingly adjust the height of the walls and the flatness of the earth. One small scoop of earth here, another gentle tap of a stone there, until the water lay still, a perfect liquid plain. Water, that eternal lifeblood, was guided down these mountain staircases with ingenious efficiency. Channels, often lined with stones or hardened clay, snaked their way down from a source high above Suftina mountain spring, a diverted stream. From these main channels, small gates or spillways allowed water to cascade from one terrace to the one below it, creating a continuous, gentle flow. The sound of this cascading water, a soft, constant murmur, became the soundtrack to life on the terraces. It was a visible and audible testament to the triumph of human will over nature, a testament to patience and generations of collective toil. The seasonal transformation of these terraced landscapes is nothing short of magical, a vibrant, living canvas painted by nature and shaped by human hands. In spring, with the arrival of the rains and the melting snows from higher peaks, the terraces fill with water. At this time, they become breathtaking mirrors, reflecting the vastness of the sky above. Clouds drift across their surfaces, mountainsides are inverted, and the early morning sun shimmers like scattered diamonds. The newly transplanted emerald green seedlings, tiny and vulnerable, stand in neat rows, breaking the glassy surface, promising future abundance. The air is fresh and cool, often carrying the scent of damp earth and new growth. The quietness of this period is profound, broken only by the distant calls of birds or the soft splash of the cascading water from one level to the next. As summer deepens, the rice plants grow taller, thicker, and lusher. The mirror-like pools disappear beneath a vibrant sea of green. The terraces become immense, verdant steps, a soft, plush carpet draped over the mountain's contours. The wind rustles through the ripening stalks, creating a soft, whispering sound that carries across the valleys. A gentle sigh of life and growth. The air warms, and the occasional buzz of insects adds to the quiet hum of the landscape. It is a season of profound growth, of silent, steady progress, as each grain of rice swells within its husk, drawing energy from the sun and nourishment from the water. Then comes autumn, and with it, the most dramatic transformation. The vibrant green gives way to a breathtaking expanse of golden hues. The terraces, heavy with ripe grain, shimmer under the sun like molten gold, spilling down the mountainsides in a magnificent cascade. The air fills with a faint, sweet scent of ripening rice, a promise of harvest. The fields are alive with the deep, rich colors of fruition, a spectacle of nature's bounty and human labor, finely realized. The individual grains, heavy with the starch that has fed civilizations for millennia, bow their heads in a silent gesture of humility and abundance. Even in winter, after the harvest, the terraces retain a stark, sculptural beauty. They might lie fallow, their walls exposed, revealing the intricate stonework in the bare, dark earth, waiting patiently for the next cycle. Sometimes hardy winter crops might be planted, providing a different, more muted green. But always the silent steppes remain, a monument to the enduring partnership between humanity and the land. These stairs to the sky are more than just agricultural land. They are living testaments to patience, community, and an ancient, unspoken understanding of how to coax life from the very bones of the earth. The fields, now softened by the gentle, insistent touch of water, await, a tapestry of flooded earth, prepared with patient hands, lies like a series of shallow mirrors reflecting the vast, pale sky. This is where the quiet symphony of the seasons truly begins, a rhythm ingrained in the very soul of the land and the people who tend it. In the nurseries, away from the main fields, the seedlings have been coaxed into being. Tiny, vibrant green shoots, like emerald blades, stand closely together, their fragile roots clinging to the softened soil. They are the promise, the delicate whisper of the harvest yet to come. Carefully, tenderly, they are separated from their communal bed, each cluster of slender stems a testament to meticulous care. The air is still cool in the early spring mornings, often carrying the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. Then comes the moment of transplanting, a ritual performed across countless generations, beneath an endless procession of suns. The human figures, often clad in simple, functional garments, step into the cool, silken mud of the main fields. It clings to their ankles, cool at first, then warming to body temperature, a constant, comforting presence around their feet. With packs bent in a graceful, almost spiritual curve, their hands reach into the water. Each movement is deliberate, practiced, a fluid dance honed over millennia. A cluster of seedlings is taken from a woven basket or bundle, the roots carefully separated from each other. Fingers, calloused from years of toil but still surprisingly nimble, push the delicate roots into the yielding mud. There is a soft, almost inaudible squelch as the mud embraces the new life. A tiny splash, a ripple, then another, and another. The pace is unhurried yet ceaseless. Row after row, the field slowly transforms, from a blank expanse of water and mud to a finely patterned grid of emerald green. The sun begins its slow climb, casting longer shadows across the water. Beads of sweat might form on a brow, but the work continues, a silent, communal endeavor. The soundscape is minimal, the gentle slap of water, the occasional soft murmur between workers, the distant call of a bird. It is a meditation in motion, each seedling a prayer for sustenance, a tangible link between effort and survival. The reflection of the sky on the water, broken by the emerging green, becomes a living canvas. The slight breeze causes the newly planted leaves to shiver, a faint, almost imperceptible rustle, like secrets being exchanged between the earth and the wind. Days turn into weeks, weeks into a slow, sun-drenched summer. The fields, once meticulously patterned, now merge into a dense, shimmering carpet of vibrant green. The individual rows blur, replaced by an unbroken expanse that stretches towards the horizon, a boundless ocean of life. The water, ever present, is a lifeline, flowing gently through the meticulously constructed irrigation channels, whispering its constant reassurance to the thirsty roots. You might hear the faint gurgle of a distant sluice gate, or the steady, almost hypnotic drip of water from a bamboo pipe. Above the field, the sky is a canvas of ever-changing light. Early morning mists often cling to the surface of the water, slowly retreating as the sun ascends, revealing the dew-kissed leaves. Throughout the day, the air hums with the soft buzzing of insects, dragonflies with iridescent wings darting amongst the stalks, tiny beetles navigating the complex world beneath the water's surface. The leaves themselves, now tall and strong, sway with a languid grace in the passing breeze, creating a continuous rustling sound, like thousands of tiny hands clapping in slow motion. It is the breath of the field, a living entity exhaling and inhaling with the rhythm of the wind. Deep within this lush canopy, hidden from the direct gaze of the sun, the rice grains begin their slow, miraculous formation. Tiny translucent kernels, initially soft and milky, gradually fill with the essence of sunlight and water, hardening into the familiar life-giving grain. The weight of these developing kernels causes the elegant panicles to bow, their slender necks bending under the precious burden. The color of the field deepens from a bright, hopeful green to a richer, more mature emerald, a testament to the quiet, ceaseless work of growth. The humidity hangs heavy in the air, the scent of growing things, of damp earth, and the unique, subtle aroma of maturing rice, mingling together. It is a time of waiting, of quiet vigilance, of patient observation as nature completes its intricate, essential work. Then, as the days shorten and the sun begins its gentle descent towards autumn, the transformation is complete. The vibrant emerald yields to a magnificent, shimmering gold. The fields are no longer a green sea, but a vast, undulating expanse of liquid amber, glowing under the softened light of the autumn sun. Each stalk, heavy with its precious bounty, bows lower, a silent gesture of offering. The air, now cooler and drier, carries the distinct, earthy fragrance of ripe grain, a scent that speaks of abundance and the culmination of months of patient labor. The harvest begins, another ancient ritual, timeless and essential. The tools are simple, a curved sickle, its blade worn smooth by generations of use, glinting dully in the sunlight, hands strong and skilled reach into the golden stalks. With a gentle, rhythmic footy shish, the blade cuts through the dry stems. The sound is distinctive, almost a whisper fendy. The soft, insistent sigh of the stalks falling, a chorus of hushed exhalations. It is not a harsh sound, but a rustling, a papery murmur that echoes across the field. Bundles of cut rice are gathered, tied together with strands of straw and laid carefully on the sun-baked earth. The movements are repetitive, almost hypnotic. Reach, cut, gather, tie, lay down. Backs bend, muscles ache, but there is a quiet, deep satisfaction in the physical exertion, in the tangible evidence of success. The sun, lower in the sky, casts long, dancing shadows of the workers across the field, their figures moving in a slow, continuous dance. As the bundles accumulate, the field slowly loses its golden cloak, revealing the stripped, sun-baked earth beneath. The scent of the dried stalks, the rustle of the husks, the low murmurs of contented voices, all blend into a symphony of closure. It is a time of both ending and beginning, a moment when the cycle completes itself, offering its bounty before preparing for another year of rest and renewal. The cool breeze picks up the lighter chaff, carrying it away in gentle eddies, a quiet cleansing of the fields. The golden light of the harvest moon begins to rise earlier each evening, casting its soft glow over the landscape, illuminating the piles of harvested rice waiting to be threshed and winnowed. The quiet hum of cicadas in the distance, a final ode to the departing warmth. Beyond the fertile river valleys of its birth, carried by the slow, persistent footsteps of migrating peoples, the whisper of rice began its long journey southwards. It wasn't a grand expedition or a sudden wave, but a gradual, almost imperceptible seep, much like water slowly finding its way through new channels. For centuries, perhaps millennia, small groups of people, driven by various needs or desires, moved from one river basin to the next, carrying their precious seeds and their ancient knowledge with them. They traveled along coastlines in simple wooden vessels, propelled by currents and paddle strokes, the rhythmic splash of water against wood a constant companion. They walked through dense, tangled forests, following animal trails or creating their own. The rustle of leaves underfoot and the calls of exotic birds replacing the familiar sounds of their ancestral lands. Across low mountain passes where the air was thinner and the quiet more profound, they bore their traditions, always moving, always adapting. As they ventured further south, the land itself began to change, subtly at first, then more dramatically. The temperate climate of the Yangtze gave way to the humid, vibrant embrace of the tropics. Here, the sun burned with a more intense brilliance, and the air was thick with a constant, pervasive moisture. The landscape exploded with an astonishing array of life, towering trees heavy with fruit, exotic flowers bursting with color, and a symphony of new sounds. The chirping of unseen creatures in the undergrowth, the buzz of countless insects, the distant roar of a tropical storm approaching. But the most significant shift was the rhythm of the sky, the monsoon. This was a force unlike any they had known, a colossal breath drawn in from the ocean and exhaled over the land in spectacular, life-giving torrents. The dry season would see the earth crack and thirst, the air heavy with heat, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for months. Then, with an almost sudden burst, the heavens would open. The sound of the monsoon rain was not gentle. It was a deafening drumbeat on tin roofs, a ceaseless roar in the forest, a churning deluge that transformed dry riverbeds into raging torrents and parched fields into shimmering lakes. And yet, rice, with its astonishing resilience and adaptability, found a way to thrive in this new intense environment. The subtle genetic variations within its ancestral lines, once perhaps unremarkable, now proved to be vital. Varieties emerged that could withstand prolonged periods of dryness, their roots delving deeper, their growth slowing to conserve energy. Even more remarkable were the so-called floating rice varieties. When the monsoon brought its most extreme floods, causing water levels to rise by several meters, these extraordinary plants would respond by elongating their stems, sometimes growing as much as a foot a day, their panicles staying just above the surging waters, a marvel of natural engineering. The visual of these vast, submerged fields, with only the golden heads of rice emerging from the floodwaters, must have been both humbling and inspiring. In these new lands, farmers learned to anticipate the monsoon's arrival, reading the subtle signs in the clouds, the wind, and the behavior of animals. They developed intricate systems of terracing on hillsides to capture and manage the abundant rainfall, sculpting the land into vast green staircases that followed the contours of the mountains. They refined their irrigation techniques, building complex networks of dikes and channels to ensure that every drop of water was utilized, guided by a deep understanding of the land's hydrology. The sound of water buffalo, their massive forms moving with slow, powerful grace, became an even more central part of the farming landscape. Their snorts and heavy footsteps mingling with the gentle slosh of mud and water as they prepared the fields. Rice, in Southeast Asia, became more than just a crop. It was woven into the very fabric of existence, a living thread binding communities and cultures. It defined the annual cycle of life, the frenetic activity of planting after the first rains, the patient tending through the humid growth season, the communal joy of harvest. Festivals revolved around its cultivation, blessings for good yields, Thanksgiving ceremonies for a successful harvest. Songs were sung about its growth, proverbs spoke of its wisdom, and myths recounted its sacred origins. The architecture of homes often reflected its importance, with raised granaries built to protect the precious grain from pests and dampness. The scent of cooking rice, ever present, became the defining aroma of home and hearth, a constant, comforting presence in every village, every household. Children grew up understanding the sacred connection between their family's labor and the bowl of steaming rice on their tables. It fostered a deep sense of community as neighbors would gather to help with the demanding tasks of planting and harvesting, their quiet, coordinated movements a testament to shared purpose and mutual reliance. The whisper of rice, here in the monsoon lands, had found a new, vibrant voice, echoing through the hot, humid air and becoming the enduring heartbeat of a civilization. Across the narrow, sometimes turbulent seas that separated the mainland from the Japanese archipelago and the Korean peninsula, the silent journey of rice continued its eastward passage. It was a voyage of faith and necessity, undertaken by small, sturdy wooden boats, their simple sails catching the coastal breezes or propelled by the strong, rhythmic strokes of oars. The creak of timber, the gentle sloshing of waves against the hull, and the occasional cry of a seabird would have been the only sounds accompanying these ancient mariners, who carried not just their families and their meager possessions, but also the precious grains and the accumulated wisdom of rice cultivation. The crossing was not always easy. The seas could be treacherous, the winds unpredictable. But the promise of new lands, new opportunities propelled them onward. These were not grand fleets of conquest, but humble vessels carrying the seeds of a quiet revolution. From the southern coasts of the Korean peninsula, a gradual diffusion began, making its way northwards, and from there across the short, often misty straits to the islands of Japan. It was a slow, persistent spread, generation by generation, as knowledge and grain were exchanged, adapted, and deeply rooted. Upon arrival, the landscape presented new challenges and new opportunities. While still blessed with water, the climate in these eastern lands was markedly different from the tropical warmth of Southeast Asia or the prolonged growing seasons of the Yangtze Basin. Winters were colder, more distinct, and the overall growing season often shorter. The topography was also varied, with volcanic soils in Japan presenting a unique set of characteristics, and mountainous terrains in both regions demanding ingenious solutions for cultivation. Here, rice began another fascinating transformation. Through generations of careful selection, both intentional and accidental, new varieties emerged that were perfectly suited to the cooler temperatures and the specific soil compositions. This was the birth of Tuni japonica, rice tuni, the short grain, rounder, and distinctly stickier varieties that would become synonymous with Japanese and Korean cuisine. Its resilience in colder climates, its unique texture, and its ability to absorb water and flavors made it ideally suited for the culinary traditions that would evolve in these regions. The gentle clatter of wooden pestles against stone mortars, husking the newly harvested sooty japonica grains, would have filled the quiet courtyards of homes and villages. The cultivation practices themselves became meticulously refined, almost an art form, given the often limited arable land. Especially in mountainous Japan, every patch of soil became precious. Terraced fields, already a feature in some areas, were carved with an astonishing precision into the steep hillsides, creating breathtaking landscapes that resembled giant, green staircases ascending towards the sky. The careful management of water, using ingenious systems of gravity-fed channels, and sometimes even small wooden water wheels to lift water to higher terraces, became paramount. The sound of these water wheels turning with a slow, deliberate grace would have added to the tranquil ambience of the valleys. In these Eastern cultures, rice quickly ascended to a position of profound cultural and spiritual significance, far beyond its role as mere sustenance. In Japan, it became intimately intertwined with Shinto, the indigenous animistic religion. Offerings of freshly pounded rice cakes, mochi, and rice wine sake were, and still are, presented to deities at shrines, symbolizing purity, fertility, and gratitude. Harvest festivals were elaborate, yet often deeply quiet and contemplative affairs, celebrating the bounty of the land and seeking blessings for future yields. The planting of rice seedlings, too, was often accompanied by gentle rituals and prayers, acknowledging the sacred cycle of life and growth. The meticulous preparation of rice for meals became a daily ritual in itself, a testament to the reverence accorded to this staple grain. The rhythmic sound of water being drawn from a well, the gentle swirl of rinsing the rice, and finally, the soft hiss of steam rising from a clay pot of freshly cooked fengohan. Cooked rice became the comforting soundtrack of countless households. The aroma, subtle yet distinctive, was the scent of home, of family, of an unbroken lineage of tradition. The quiet dignity of the rice farmer, their meticulous attention to detail, and their deep connection to the land became a revered ideal. The subtle changes in the appearance of the rice plants throughout their growth cycle, from the vibrant green of spring to the golden hues of autumn, were observed with an almost poetic sensitivity. The feeling of the cold, clear spring water on the hands during transplanting, the gentle warmth of the summer sun on the neck, and the crisp, cool air of autumn during harvest, all became integral parts of a deeply ingrained way of life. Rice, in these eastern lands, was not just food, it was a symbol of prosperity, purity, and life itself. It defined the calendar, the festivals, the communal bonds, and the very identity of the people. The whisper of rice carried across the eastern seas had found a quiet but powerful resonance, becoming the bedrock of rich and enduring civilizations. The faint whispers of rice, carried by unseen currents, eventually found their way beyond the sheltered valleys of its origin, a quiet journey westward, not a roaring wave, but a delicate, almost imperceptible trickle. Imagine the caravans, slow-moving shadows against the vast ochre, dusted landscapes of Central Asia, laden with spices and silks, their journeys measured by the weary footsteps of camels and the distant cry of desert winds. It was along these ancient silk roads, threads of commerce and culture stretching across continents, that the first few grains of rice may have made their tentative way, nestled amongst more coveted goods, not as a staple, not yet, but as a curiosity, a rare item carried by merchants who had seen its cultivation in lands far to the east. Perhaps a handful stored in a small cloth pouch, exchanged for a coin or two, planted tentatively by an curious farmer in an oasis that seemed just humid enough. The journey was arduous, marked by immense distances and vastly different climates. For millennia, rice had thrived in the warm, water-rich environments of its Asian cradle. Now it faced arid plains, colder winters, and the formidable challenges of adapting to landscapes that offered scant resemblance to its ancestral home. The knowledge of its cultivation, too, traveled slowly, passed from one generation to the next, often fragmented and incomplete. There was no grand expedition to introduce rice to the West, no orchestrated agricultural transfer. Instead, it was a haphazard scattering, like seeds blown by an indifferent wind, some finding purchase, most simply fading into the unfamiliar soil. In ancient Persia, the lands now known as Iran, rice found a slightly more welcoming embrace. Traders moving through Mesopotamia, a land already blessed with the Fertile Crescent and the life-giving waters of the Tigris and Euphrates, likely brought rice around the 4th century BCE. Here, the grain began its slow integration into local cuisine, often appearing on the tables of the wealthy, a symbol of exotic taste and refinement. Imagine the meticulous preparation of Persian cello figi palo, where each grain is meant to be separate, distinct, almost standing at attention fide. A culinary tradition born from the careful adaptation of an Eastern grain to a new palate and a new environment. The methods of irrigation in Mesopotamia, sophisticated even then, provided a lifeline for this water-loving plant, allowing small pockets of cultivation to flourish. It was still a luxury, a testament to trade and prosperity, rather than a cornerstone of daily life. From Persia, the silent spread continued, carried by soldiers, settlers, and the persistent flow of commerce into the Mediterranean basin. By the time of the Roman Empire, references to Fioriza rice appear in texts. Though it was primarily valued for its medicinal properties, its perceived ability to soothe the stomach or aid digestion, rather than as a common foodstuff. It was an imported commodity, expensive and rare, found in apothecaries more often than in granaries. Imagine the surprise of a Roman physician grinding these small, smooth grains into a powder, believing in its healing powers, unaware of the millennia of human effort and natural evolution that had brought it to his hands. The significant introduction of rice to Europe, particularly the Iberian Peninsula, occurred much later with the arrival of the Moors in the 8th century CE. They brought with them not just the grain, but also the sophisticated agricultural techniques and irrigation systems perfected in the arid landscapes of North Africa and the Middle East. In regions like Valencia in Spain, and later in Italy's Po Valley, rice found new homes. Here, the landscape was marshy, prone to flooding and seemingly inhospitable for other crops, yet perfectly suited for the thirsty rice plant. Imagine the quiet industry of Moorish farmers, adapting their knowledge, carefully shaping the land, digging new channels for water to flow, turning wetlands into fertile rice paddies under the Mediterranean sun. The air would have been thick with the buzz of insects, the scent of damp earth, and the faint, sweet smell of rice shoots. Even then, its cultivation was a painstaking process, requiring constant attention to water levels, careful hand, weeding, and a deep understanding of the land. It remained a relatively specialized crop, grown in specific regions where conditions were favorable, rather than spreading ubiquitously across the continent. This westward journey was one of slow assimilation, of adaptation and patience, a quiet testament to the grain's enduring resilience and humanity's ceaseless quest for sustenance. Within the vast, unfolding tapestry of rice's journey, countless varieties emerged, each a subtle testament to the marriage of climate, soil, and human selection. Imagine, if you will, a global gallery of grains, each whispering its own distinct story. Consider first the Fuji basmati rice, a name derived from the Sanskrit word for fragrant. Picture it, if you can, unadorned in a small wooden bowl. The grains are long, exquisitely slender, almost needle-like, with a pearlescent sheen that catches the light like tiny, polished pearls. They possess an inherent elegance, a gentle curve that speaks of generations of careful cultivation in the alluvial plains at the foot of the Himalayas, in regions spanning what is now India and Pakistan. Before cooking, if you bring a small handful close, a faint, almost imperceptible aroma might rise to free. A whisper of nuts, a hint of dry earth, an echo of the sun-baked fields where it ripened. But the true magic of basmati unfolds in the steam. As it absorbs the warm water, swelling and elongating further, it releases a truly captivating fragrance. It is a complex bouquet, a comforting, slightly popcorn-like note, mingled with a delicate nuttiness and a subtle, almost floral sweetness that is unique to this variety. When cooked, each grain remains separate, individual, never clinging, light and fluffy, almost weightless on the tongue. The texture is firm yet yielding, a subtle chewness that gives way to a soft interior. It feels dry and airy, not moist or sticky, allowing the accompanying flavors of a rich curry or a fragrant pilaf to shine through. Each grain a distinct vessel for taste. This distinct character is shaped by specific soil compositions, the unique mineral content of the glacial meltwaters that feed the fields, and centuries of farmers meticulously selecting for fragrance and length. Then, turn your attention to Saivan jasmine rice, known as Saivan Ham Mali, in its native Thailand, a name that translates to fragrant jasmine flower. Its origins lie deep within the monsoon-drenched plains of Southeast Asia, where humid air hangs heavy and verdant, rice paddies stretch to the horizon. The uncooked grains are medium long, slightly broader than basmati, with a soft, translucent, milky white appearance. There is a gentle roundness to them, a less angular elegance. Before it meets water, its raw scent is mild, perhaps a fleeting hint of something starchy and pure. But just as its name suggests, jasmine rice, when cooked, unfurls the delicate, almost ethereal aroma. It is a sweet, floral note, reminiscent of the blossom of the jasmine flower itself, subtle and calming, not as assertive as basmati, but deeply comforting. The fragrance is less about nuttiness and more about a gentle, clean sweetness that fills the air around a steaming bowl. In terms of texture, jasmine rice is known for its softness and a very slight stickiness. The grains hold together gently, moist and tender, making it an ideal companion for the vibrant, spicy, and often saucy dishes of Thai and other Southeast Asian cuisines. It has a pillowy mouthfeel, melting on the tongue, offering a soothing counterpoint to bold flavors. the environment of its growth sui, the rich, dark soils of the river deltas, the consistent warmth, and the abundant seasonal rains all contribute to its tender nature and sweet perfume. Next, shift your gaze to side arborio rice, a grain deeply rooted in the culinary heart of Italy, specifically the marshy Po Valley. Unlike its Asian cousins, arborio presents a distinctly different character. The uncooked grains are shorter, plump, almost stubby, with a characteristic pearly white opacity. They are robust, compact, and feel firm to the touch. The raw aroma is minimal, a clean, starchy scent without the pronounced fragrance of basmati or jasmine. Arborio's true magic lies in its unique cooking properties. It is a grain engineered for absorption, designed to drink in liquids, flavors, and aromas, transforming them into a creamy, luxurious experience. As it cooks, the outer layers of the grain release a milky starch, creating a rich, velvety sauce. Yet the very core of each grain retains a satisfying bite and trendy al dente resistance that is the hallmark of a perfectly executed risotto. Imagine the gentle bubbling of stock as it is slowly added, ladle by ladle, to the stirring arborio, watching as the liquid vanishes, leaving behind a smooth, glossy texture. The cooked grain is tender and yielding on the outside, almost melting yet firm and chewy within, a delightful duality of texture. Its neutral, clean flavor profile allows the other ingredients in a dish, saffron, mushrooms, cheese, saffron, mushrooms, cheese tapenade, while providing a comforting, substantial base. The cool, wet climate of northern Italy, with its extensive network of irrigation canals designed to flood the rice paddies, created the ideal conditions for the development of this particular, starchy, robust variety, a testament to European ingenuity in adapting an Eastern staple to local tastes and conditions. These three, basmati, jasmine, and arborio, are but a tiny glimpse into the kaleidoscope of rice varieties that have quietly taken root across the globe. There is the earthy, nutty, forbidden black rice from China, with its striking dark hue and chewy texture. There is the round, pearly sushi rice of Japan, carefully bred for its sticky consistency, essential for forming perfect rolls. There are the resilient red rices, often from Bhutan or the Camargue region of France, offering a rustic chew and a subtly sweet, complex flavor. Each variety, shaped by centuries of human touch and the embrace of a specific landscape, carries within its unassuming form a unique confluence of appearance, aroma, and texture, a quiet symphony of evolution played out across the world's diverse palates. Long before the gleaming machines of modern mills, the transformation of harvested rice paddies into edible grain was a story of pure, relentless human labor, a rhythmic dance of muscle and stone that stretched back into the mists of prehistory. Imagine the simplest beginnings, immediately after the harvest. The golden stalks, heavy with grain, would be brought from the fields, their husks still firmly clinging to the precious kernels within. The initial processing was a matter of sheer force and repetitive motion. Picture a small village in ancient Asia, perhaps 10,000 years ago. In the center, a large, heavy stone mortar, a shallow depression patiently carved into a boulder or a sturdy piece of wood. Nearby, a group of figures, their backs bent, their arms strong, wielding long, heavy wooden pestles. The harvested rice, still in its husk, would be poured into the mortar. Then, the rhythmic pounding would begin. Up and down, up and down, the pestle would fall with a dull, resonant thud, striking the grains, tumbling them, cracking the outer layer. The air would fill with the faint dust of chaff, the dry, earthy scent of disturbed grain, and the persistent, hypnotic sound of the pounding. This was not a quick task. It was an endurance test. Hours, perhaps an entire day, would be spent over a single batch of grain. Each lift and fall of the pestle slowly, laboriously separating the rough, inedible husk from the brown rice kernel. The process was imperfect, leaving many grains still partially covered, others shattered, but it was effective enough to render the grain digestible. After the pounding, the mixture of husks, broken grains, and roughly hulled rice would be scooped into shallow, woven baskets. Then came the winnowing, a graceful, almost spiritual act. The basket would be lifted, gently shaken, and tilted, allowing the wind to carry away the lighter husks, while the heavier grains fell back into the basket. This was a dance with the breeze, an intimate understanding of natural forces, a silent communion between human ingenuity and the elements. The resulting grain was brown rice, still encased in its nutritious bran layer, hardy and robust, the foundation of ancient diets. Centuries, then millennia passed, and human ingenuity, driven by the persistent need for efficiency and a touch of comfort, slowly introduced refinements. One of the most significant advancements was the 40-water, powered trip hammer or water mill. Imagine a quiet stream or river, its current harnessed by a sturdy wooden wheel. This wheel, slowly turning, would power a series of levers, each connected to a heavy wooden pestle. Instead of human muscle, it was the tireless flow of water that now lifted and dropped these pestles into mortars filled with rice. The soundscape of the village would subtly change. The irregular, effortful thud of manual pounding would be replaced by a steady, rhythmic creak of turning wood, the gentle splash of water, and the consistent, almost mesmerizing thud of the trip hammers. These early water mills were marvels of simple engineering. Wooden axles, often thick and gnarled, would extend from the water wheel, studded with pegs. As the axle turned, these pegs would catch the end of long levers, lifting the pestles. When the peg released, gravity would do its work, sending the pestle crashing down into the mortar. This continuous, self-sustaining motion allowed for larger quantities of rice to be processed with significantly less human exertion, though still requiring oversight and maintenance. The air around the mill would be damp, cool from the water, and filled with the consistent hum of industry. The husks would still be separated, and the same winnowing process would follow, often aided by wind tunnels built into the mill structure. This was still the realm of brown rice, a grain that retained its outer bran, rich in nutrients, a testament to a diet rooted in whole foods. The desire for white rice, however, began to emerge over time, driven by evolving tastes, social status, and a misguided belief in its superior purity and digestibility. Polished white rice, stripped of its bran and germ, was perceived as more refined, a food for the elite, while brown rice was increasingly seen as the fare of the common farmer. The shift from brown to polished rice was not instantaneous, but a gradual, deliberate process that required further innovation in milling techniques. The earliest forms of polishing involved extending the pounding process, or rubbing the hulled brown rice between stones, sometimes with sand or ash to abrade the outer layers. Imagine the meticulous care, the slow, grinding motion. as farmers or millers sought to achieve that elusive, pure white sheen. Later, specialized polishing machines were developed, often in conjunction with the watermills. These might involve rotating wooden drums lined with rough surfaces, or stones that gently rubbed against the grains, gradually stripping away the bran layer. The sound would have been less of a thud and more of a persistent, soft abrasion, a continuous rustling and grinding. The air around these polishing stations would be thick with fine, whitish bran dust, coating everything in a powdery film. The process of polishing was a delicate balance. Enough abrasion to remove the bran, but not so much as to shatter the precious white kernel within. Each pass through the polisher would render the grains whiter, smoother, and more uniform in appearance. The discarded bran, once a vital part of the grain, was often used as animal feed or fertilizer, its nutritional value unknowingly cast aside in pursuit of aesthetic perfection. The resulting white rice, so distinct in its purity, marked a significant departure in both taste and nutritional profile from its brown predecessor. It was softer, cooked faster, and had a milder, more neutral flavor. But this refinement came at a cost, eventually leading to the widespread deficiency disease known as beriberi populations, heavily reliant on polished rice. A stark, silent reminder of humanity's long and often circuitous path towards understanding its food. The history in the bowl, therefore, is not just one of transformation, but also one of slow learning, of trial and error, a testament to the patient, unyielding effort to turn a humble wild grass into the life, sustaining grain it is today. The shift was almost imperceptible, stretched across millennia, a slow, gentle settling into an inescapable rhythm. Before rice, meals had been a matter of chance, of what the forest yielded, what the river offered, what the changing seasons permitted. Berries, roots, the occasional hunted animal tarfantak, a tapestry of unpredictable sustenance. But with the patient coaxing of the wild grain, with the slow mastery of water and earth, something profound began to anchor itself in the very soul of human existence. Rice became more than food, it became the bedrock, the unspoken promise whispered from field to hearth, from dawn to dusk. Imagine the daily awakening in a modest dwelling centuries, perhaps millennia, after the first rice grains had been carefully sown. The fire, kept alive through the night's embers, is coaxed back to life with a gentle breath and a scattering of dry tinder. A seasoned clay pot, its surface smooth from countless meals, is filled with water drawn from a nearby well or stream. And then, with hands that know the precise measure through generations of inherited wisdom, the grains are poured. They tumble into the water with a soft, murmuring whisper, a sound that is echoed through uncounted kitchens for epochs. These were not just any grains. These were the descendants of those tenacious wild grasses, patiently selected, gently guided towards domestication. Each grain held within it the accumulated memory of 10,000 years of sunlight, of cool water, of human touch. As the fire crackles beneath the pot, a low, comforting hum begins to emanate, a prelude to the transformation. The water, initially still and clear, soon begins to shimmer, then to dance with tiny effervescent bubbles. A subtle steam, almost invisible at first, begins its slow ascent, carrying with it the first faint promise of nourishment. The aroma, when it finally unfurls itself into the air, is unlike any other. It is not sharp or pungent, not the heady spice of distant lands, nor the earthy musk of fresh-turned soil. It is a clean, almost ethereal fragrance, a gentle warmth that speaks of simple sustenance, of pure energy. It is the scent of life, meticulously cultivated, patiently prepared. This particular fragrance, so subtle yet so deeply ingrained in the collective memory, became the scent of home, of family, of security. For the vast populations across Asia, the smell of cooking rice was the very definition of comfort, a daily assurance against the gnawing emptiness of hunger. It was the olfactory signature of civilization itself. When the rice is cooked, the lid is lifted, releasing a plume of warm, moist steam that momentarily clouds the vision, softening the edges of the room. The grains, once hard and translucent, have transformed into soft, yielding pearls, plump and inviting. They are carefully spooned into bowls, perhaps crafted from wood or ceramic, each one a testament to the artisan's skill and the earth's bounty. There is a weight to the bowl, a comforting heft that speaks of substance, of satiation. The act of eating, then, is not merely consumption. It is a ritual deeply ingrained, often performed in quiet contemplation. The texture, soft yet with a delicate bite, melts on the tongue. The taste is subtle, almost neutral, allowing it to be the perfect canvas for the few accompanying vegetables, or perhaps a sliver of fish. But even on its own, with nothing else, it is enough. It is the purest form of energy, digested slowly, steadily, fueling the body for the labors of the day, sustaining it through the long, quiet hours of the night. This daily encounter with rice became the anchor of existence. From the bustling market towns to the most isolated mountain villages, from the smallest family unit to the largest communal gathering, rice was the constant. It provided the reliable calorie base that allowed societies to grow, to build, to dream beyond the immediate struggle for survival. With a steady supply of energy, minds could turn to art, to philosophy, to governance, to the slow, painstaking construction of enduring cultures. It was the silent enabler of all grand human endeavors, the humble grain that allowed complex civilizations to unfurl their intricate patterns. Without this reliable cornerstone, the elaborate tapestry of Asian societies would have unraveled before it was even begun. The ability to feed a growing population consistently meant that fewer hands were needed for constant foraging, freeing them for other tasks, forwarding them for other tasks, for craftsmanship, for scholarship, for the defense of the village. It fostered a sense of permanence, of rootedness to the land. People could settle, build homes, establish traditions, knowing that the earth, when properly tended, would yield its nourishing bounty again and again. The presence of rice in the granary, the knowledge of its availability, quelled anxieties that had once dominated every waking hour. This stability allowed for specialization, for trade, for the emergence of complex social hierarchies and governance systems. The very notion of a predictable future, a concept so foundational to human progress, began with the humble grain and its faithful yield. The steam rising from a bowl of cooked rice, then, was more than just vapor. It was the visible breath of a continent, a quiet declaration of resilience, a soft assurance echoing through countless generations. It was the steady, unwavering heartbeat of daily life, pulsating with an ancient rhythm, connecting every individual to the vast, slow turning of the earth and the patient, persistent efforts of all those who came before. In every grain, a whisper of 10 millennia of care, of growth, of quiet, profound sustenance. It became the unspoken language of belonging, of survival, of the simple, enduring joy of a full belly and a peaceful mind. The very fabric of society, from the most basic family meal to the grandest imperial banquet, was woven with these tiny, unassuming pearls. It truly was the silent, humble cornerstone upon which so much was built, a quiet miracle repeated at every meal, every day, in millions of homes. The profound implications of this dietary staple extend into every facet of human experience, grounding existence in a fundamental sense of reliability and continuity that few other foods have ever achieved. The subtle aroma of cooking rice, emanating from countless hearths, became the deep, resonant chord of settled human life. The slow, steady rhythm of rice cultivation did more than just fill bellies. It carved time itself. Before the meticulous practice of paddy farming, the year flowed in a more fluid, less defined way, marked by the sun's ascent and descent, the moon's waxing and waning, the arbitrary blossoming of certain trees, or the migration of birds. But the demands of the rice plant, its precise needs, its unyielding cycle, imposed a new, deeply ingrained structure upon human existence. The agricultural calendar, born from the very life of the grain, became the fundamental clock of countless villages and families, dictating not just work, but celebration, rest, and hope. The year would begin, not with a ceremonial flourish, but with the quiet anticipation of spring. The earth, softened by winter rains, would slowly warm, calling forth the first tentative green shoots from the fallow fields. For the farmers, this was a period of intense preparation. The land, having rested, needed to be awakened. It would be tilled, often with the patient assistance of water buffalo, turning over the rich, dark soil. The clods of earth, heavy with moisture, would break apart under the plow, releasing the deep, earthy scent of renewal. Ditches would be cleaned, embankments repaired, ensuring that the precious water would flow precisely where it was needed when the time came. Seeds, carefully saved from the previous harvest, would be soaked, slowly stirring their latent life, preparing for their journey into the world. This was a season of quiet hope, a time for mending, for sharpening, for looking ahead with a focused intensity. Every tool, from the simple wooden rake to the more elaborate foot plow, would be inspected, repaired, and readied. The wisdom of generations guided these preparations, an intuitive understanding of the soil, the climate, and the subtle cues of nature. The quiet discussions around the evening fire would revolve around rainfall patterns, the readiness of the fields, and the collective plan for the arduous tasks ahead. As spring deepened, transitioning into the gentle warmth of early summer, the crucial period of transplanting would arrive. This was an arduous, back-breaking task, but one imbued with a profound sense of communal purpose. Young rice seedlings, nurtured in small, protected beds, would be carefully pulled from the mud, their delicate roots clinging to the earth. Then, under the unwavering gaze of the sun, and with backs bent low, farmers would wade into the prepared paddies. Water, cool and calm, would lap at their knees as they systematically, rhythmically, pushed each seedling into the soft, yielding mud. Row after precise row, an emerald green tapestry would begin to unfurl across the flooded fields. The sound in the paddies during these weeks was not of loud conversation, but of splashing water, the soft squelch of feet in mud, the rhythmic thodi as bundles of seedlings were tossed. It was a symphony of quiet diligence, a collective meditation on growth and survival. Each seedling represented a promise, a future meal, a link in the unbroken chain of life. The muscles would burn, the sun would beat down, but the work continued, propelled by a silent understanding of necessity and a shared vision of the future harvest. The uniformity of the rows, the perfect spacing of each plant, was a testament to the skill and dedication embedded in every movement. The long, humid days of summer would then settle over the land. This was a period of vigilant guardianship. The young rice plants, now firmly rooted, would begin their steady ascent towards maturity. The paddies, mirrors to the sky, would transform into an undulating sea of vibrant green. Weeds, the constant competitors for nutrients and light, would need to be meticulously removed, often by hand, in the scorching sun. Pests, ever-present threats, would be monitored and deterred. Water levels would be carefully managed, raised or lowered with patient adjustments to sluice gates and earthen dams. The air would hang heavy with the scent of green growth, of warm, damp earth, and the distant hum of unseen insects. The work was less intense than planting, but it demanded an unwavering attention, a constant watchful care, like a parent tending to a growing child. The farmers watched the plants stretch towards the sun, their grains slowly swelling, each stalk a quiet testament to the earth's fertility and their own unceasing labor. The subtle shifts in the color of the leaves, the faint rustle of the stalks in the breeze, all were read as signs of progress or potential trouble, requiring immediate, intuitive response. Then, as the air grew crisp and the sun began its slow tilt towards winter, autumn would arrive, bringing with it the golden climax of the year, the harvest. The once vibrant green fields would now shimmer with a breathtaking expanse of golden yellow, the heavy heads of grain bowing gently in the breeze. This was the busiest, most joyous, yet most physically demanding season. Families, often joined by neighbors, would move through the fields with their scythes and sickles, the rhythmic swish-swish of steel against stalk filling the air. Bundles of rice would be gathered, carried on shoulders or backs, sometimes transported by patient water buffalo, to threshing grounds where the grains would be separated from the straw. The air would be thick with the dust of chaff, the dry rustle of harvested stalks, and the quiet satisfaction of hard work culminating in abundance. This was the time for collective effort, for sharing the burdens and the bounty. It was a period of intense activity, yet still underscored by a profound sense of ancient rhythm, an echo of countless harvests past. The collective laughter of children playing on the edges of the fields, the shared meals under the autumn sun, all contributed to the deep communal joy that marked the season of plenty. Finally, as the days shortened and the cold winds began to whisper across the land, winter would descend. The fields, stripped bare of their golden bounty, would lie fallow once more, resting, regenerating. This was a time for repair, for craft, for storytelling around the hearth, for the quiet planning of the next cycle. The harvested rice, carefully stored in granaries, became the measure of the year's success, the buffer against lean times, the tangible representation of collective effort and the earth's generosity. It sustained families through the coldest months, a constant reminder of the summer's sun and autumn's gifts. The quiet evenings of winter were a time for reflection, for passing down oral histories, for repairing tools, and for mending clothes, all in preparation for the inevitable return of spring and the renewal of the rice cycle. This period of rest was not idleness but a crucial pause, a gathering of strength before the next demanding season. This four-season cycle, dictated by the immutable demands of the rice plant, became far more than just an agricultural schedule. It was the very pulse of life, the invisible hand that shaped daily routines, social gatherings, religious festivals, and even individual identities. Births, marriages, deaths, all were woven into the larger tapestry of the rice year. The rhythms of sowing and reaping were imprinted on the collective consciousness, forming a shared understanding of time that transcended mere clock watching. Every action, every decision, every expectation was informed by the demands of the rice. The farmers lived in deep communion with the earth, their lives inextricably linked to the patient turning of the seasons, forever bound to the quiet, powerful clock of the rice field. It was a rhythm that promised renewal, but also demanded unceasing labor, a silent, relentless dance with the very essence of time itself. This deep connection to the land and its cycles fostered a profound reverence for nature, an understanding of humanity's place within the larger cosmic dance. In the vast, verdant expanse of the rice paddies, surrounded by the shimmering silence of water and growing plants, the individual's effort often merged seamlessly into the collective. The sheer scale of the labor required for rice cultivation from preparing the soil to planting, from tending to harvesting meant that no single family, no matter how industrious, could truly manage alone. And so, born out of necessity and forged over millennia, the profound bond of shared labor became a defining characteristic of rice-growing communities. It was a quiet, unspoken covenant, a testament to mutual reliance, woven into the very fabric of village life. Imagine, if you will, the early morning light, still soft and hesitant, just beginning to paint the eastern sky with pale hues of rose and gold. A cool mist might cling to the surface of the paddies, softening the sharp edges of the landscape, muffling the sounds from small, simple homes often built of mud and thatch. Figures would begin to emerge. They would walk in quiet procession, sometimes alone, sometimes in small family clusters, carrying their simple tools, bundles of young rice seedlings, carefully tied, well-worn sickles, their blades gleaming dully, perhaps a small woven basket for a meager lunch. The air would carry the faint, sweet scent of wood smoke from morning fires, mingling with the earthy fragrance of the awakening fields. There would be no hurried shouts, no loud calls, merely the soft shuffle of bare feet on damp earth, the occasional gentle cough, a quiet word of greeting exchanged with a nod. The children, perhaps too young to join the labor, would observe from the edge of the fields, their curiosity tempered by the solemnity of the task, already beginning to absorb the unspoken lessons of their elders. As they reached the designated paddy, the work would begin with an almost meditative grace. During transplanting season, men and women, often side by side, would wade into the cool water. Their movements, honed by generations of practice, were economical and precise. Bent at the waist, sometimes almost doubled over, they would reach down, planting each delicate seedling with a gentle push into the soft mud. Their hands, accustomed to the feel of the earth and the water, worked with an almost unconscious efficiency. The rhythm was hypnotic. Reach, plant, pull back, step forward. Reach, plant, pull back, step forward. An entire line of people, moving in slow, synchronized unison, creating perfect, geometrically precise rows across the flooded field. The sun would gradually climb higher, its warmth penetrating the cool morning air, drying the dew from the leaves, but the workers would continue their patient, unceasing efforts, their bodies moving with an ancient, deeply rooted wisdom. The sounds in the paddy were subtle, a symphony of quiet industry. The gentle splash of water as a foot was lifted and then lowered, the soft squelch of mud yielding to pressure, the faint rustle of leaves as a bundle of seedlings was replenished. Occasionally a farmer might hum a low, ancient tune, or a mother might softly speak to a child observing from the bank. But conversation was minimal, unnecessary. Each person understood their role, their place in the larger dance. The shared effort transcended the need for words. It was a communion of purpose, a silent understanding passed down through the very fibers of their being. Eyes would meet occasionally, a glance of shared burden, a flicker of mutual encouragement. But mostly their gazes were fixed on the muddy water, on the precise placement of each small plant. The only other sounds would be the distant calls of birds, the gentle murmur of the wind through taller grasses, all contributing to an atmosphere of focused, collective endeavor. Later in the year, when the harvest arrived, the communal aspect would become even more pronounced. The golden fields, heavy with mature grain, demanded swift and coordinated action. Neighbors would lend their hands, their backs, their tools to families whose fields were ready for reaping. It was an unwritten law, a fundamental expectation. One day, a family would help their neighbor gather their bounty. The next, those neighbors would return the favor. Long lines of harvesters would move through the shimmering stalks, the rhythmic swish, swish of sickles cutting through the air. Bundles of rice, heavy and fragrant, would be passed along a human chain, loaded onto buffalo carts or carried on the heads and shoulders of men and women, their faces streaked with sweat and dust, their bodies aching but their spirits buoyed by the shared accomplishment. Children, now a little older, might join in the lighter tasks, learning the motions, understanding the deep satisfaction of contributing to the common good. The day would pass in this quiet, relentless exertion. The sun would climb, burn fiercely, and then begin its slow descent, casting long, wavering shadows across the fields. Muscles would ache, backs would protest, and hands would grow rough and calloused from the work. But as the last bundles were gathered, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, a profound sense of satisfaction would settle over the weary workers. They would share simple meals together, perhaps rice, cooked over an open fire, accompanied by a few vegetables or a small piece of salted fish. The food would taste sweeter, more nourishing, imbued with the collective effort. Laughter softer now would ripple through the twilight, and stories slow and easy might be shared. The sense of unity, of having overcome the day's demands together, was a powerful, intangible reward. This shared labor was more than just an efficient way to get work done. It was the very glue that held these communities together, forging an unbreakable bond between individuals and families. It instilled a deep sense of interdependence, a recognition that survival itself was a collective endeavor. It taught patience, cooperation, and the profound value of a helping hand. The silent cooperation in the paddies, the rhythmic movements of many bodies working as one, created a palpable sense of unity, a shared destiny. It erased, for those moments of intense labor, any minor grievances or social distinctions, reducing everyone to the fundamental human act of coaxing life from the earth. The generations observed this, children watching their parents and grandparents, silently absorbing the lessons of communal strength and mutual support. In the rice fields, under the indifferent gaze of the sun and moon, countless villages were not just growing food, they were cultivating the very essence of their shared humanity, one quiet, cooperative movement at a time. The bonds forged here, in the mud and under the sun, were as strong and enduring as the land itself, passed down with the seeds and the stories, from one generation to the next, a ceaseless comforting hum in the life of the village. This shared endeavor transformed hard work into a communal meditation, a silent ritual of connection, strengthening the unseen threads that bound them all together. In some quiet corners of the world, rice was never just a plant. It was a presence, a spirit, a being that lived in the water and the soil and responded to the kindness of human hands. Stories were told not in books, but in the low murmur of evening conversations, passed down from one generation to the next, soft as the rustle of dry leaves. They say that in the beginning, the grains of rice were not small and countless as they are today. They say a single grain was so large it could feed a family for a week. It was a gift from the heavens, or from the water spirits, a perfect pearlescent jewel that required no threshing, no milling, only gratitude. In these legends, the rice would ripen in the fields, and when it was ready, it would roll itself to the door of the village granary, waiting to be stored. There was no labor in the harvest, only the work of being worthy of such a gift. But, as stories often go, humanity became complacent. One year, a woman in the village grew impatient. She saw the giant grain of rice rolling slowly toward the granary and thought it was moving too sluggishly. She was busy. She had other things to do. And in her frustration, she took a heavy wooden husking pedal, a large hammer, and she struck the grain, ordering it to move faster. The moment the hammer hit, the great grain of rice did not shatter like glass. It exploded into a million tiny pieces, a white cloud of dust that scattered across the fields and into the wind. The spirit of the rice was wounded, and it declared that from that day forward, humanity would have to work for its food. They would have to plant the tiny fragments, tend to them in the mud and the sun, and harvest them stalk by stalk, their backs bent in apology. And they would have to thresh and mill the tiny grains, working tirelessly to gather enough to fill a single bowl. The sound of the hammer, a dull thud against the pearlescent surface, became the echo of a lesson learned, a reminder whispered in the rhythmic pounding of pestles and mortars for thousands of years to come. This story in its many forms was a way of weaving respect into the very fabric of cultivation. It was a way to remember that the food that sustained them was not a right but a relationship. And so, the rice became a vessel for more than just sustenance. It became a symbol, a quiet language understood without words. In many cultures, small offerings of uncooked rice were placed on altars for the ancestors, a simple bowl of perfect white grains to feed the spirits on their journey. It was a bridge between the visible and the invisible world, a gesture of remembrance and continuity. During the planting season, rituals were performed not with loud fanfare, but with a quiet intensity. A village elder might select the first seedlings, dipping their roots into sacred water before placing them gently into the mud of the nursery bed. It was a prayer whispered to the earth, a prayer for rain but not too much rain, a prayer for sun but not a scorching sun, a prayer against the locusts and the blight, a plea for the delicate balance that would allow the fields to turn from green to gold. When the harvest came, the first stalks of rice were often cut with a special knife, reserved only for this purpose. They were bundled together, sometimes woven into the shape of a woman, the rice mother, and carried back to the village with reverence. This bundle was not threshed. It was kept in the granary, a guest of honor, its spirit watching over the rest of the grain, ensuring the store would last through the long, dark months of winter, and that the next planting would be just as fruitful. It was a physical manifestation of hope, of the belief in the cycle of seasons and the promise of renewal. Even the wedding ceremony was touched by the quiet power of rice. Throwing rice at a newly married couple was not just a celebration, it was a blessing. Each tiny grain was a wish for prosperity, for a future with a full pantry and a life free from hunger. It was a wish for fertility for a family as numerous as the grains scattered on the ground. It was a shower of hope, 1,000 tiny prayers for a life of abundance, rooted in the most fundamental element of their world. The rice was there at the beginning of a life, at the marking of a new family, and it was there at the end, a final meal offered to the departed, and nothing was wasted. The stalk, the part of the plant that held the grain to the sky, found its own purpose after the harvest. The rice straw, brittle and golden, smelling of dried sunshine and earth, was woven into everything. It became the sandals that protected feet from the hot ground. It was twisted into strong rope that could tether a water buffalo or tie a wooden gate shut. It was layered and compressed to become the thick, fragrant thatch on the roof of a house, a shelter that kept the rain out and the warmth in. It sent a constant, comforting presence. It was laid down in the stables to become soft petting for the animals, and when it had served all its other purposes, it was returned to the earth, burned to ash to enrich the soil, or mixed back into the mud to decompose, completing its cycle, ready to nourish the next generation of seedlings. The life of the rice was a perfect, unending circle of giving. And all of this history, this quiet, sprawling epic of water and earth, of patience and necessity, of myth and ritual. It finds its way to you. It finds its way into the present moment. Perhaps you can picture it now. A simple ceramic bowl held in your hands. It might be cool to the touch, or perhaps it's still warm. Feel its weight, its smooth, curved surface. It is an anchor, a small, tangible piece of the world. And inside, a small mound of white rice. Look closer. Don't just see a pile of food. See a mosaic of individual grains. Each one is a tiny sculpture, sculpted by water and sunlight and genetics. Some are long and slender, like elegant needles. Others are short and plump, almost round, with a pearlescent, milky sheen. Notice how they cling to one another, a community in a bowl. See the steam rising from them, if they are warm. It is a soft, almost invisible mist, carrying with it a scent so subtle, so clean, it is almost just the scent of warmth itself. This is where the 10,000-year journey ends. In this bowl, in your hands, each single grain is a time capsule. It holds the memory of sunlight, not the harsh, direct glare of midday, but the accumulated light of 120 slow afternoons. The patient, silent work of photosynthesis, turning light into life. It holds the memory of water, the taste of the river, the coolness of the morning dew, the lashing of the monsoon rain. Water that has traveled from mountain springs, through ancient riverbeds, and into the thirsty roots of a single stalk, drawn up through capillaries finer than a human hair. It holds the secrets of the earth, the mineral tang of the soil, the dark richness of the clay, the history of 1,000 seasons of decay and rebirth held within the ground it grew in. It is the essence of a specific place, a particular patch of land that has been worked and reworked, its character absorbed into the very structure of the grain. And more than anything, it holds the echo of human touch. It holds the patience of the hands that sorted the seeds, choosing only the best for the next planting. It holds the strain in the back of the farmer who bent for hours to gently press each seedling into the flooded earth. It holds the watchfulness of the eyes that scanned the fields for signs of disease, that monitored the water levels with an intuition born of a lifetime of observation. It holds the rhythmic swish of the scythe, the sound of 1,000 stalks being cut at once in a silent, coordinated dance. It holds the weariness and the satisfaction of the harvest, the ache in the shoulders, the dust in the throat, the quiet joy of a granary filled against the coming winter. Think of the journey of just one of those grains, from the field to the threshing floor, where it was separated from its stalk, to the mill where its tough outer husk was stripped away, to the market carried on a cart or a boat or a truck, to the store, to the bag, to your kitchen. It is a journey of 1,000 hands, 1,000 intentions, a chain of effort stretching back through the ages, all culminating in this simple, perfect offering. When you lift a spoonful to your mouth, it is more than just food. It is the culmination of a vast and silent history. It is a communion with every farmer who ever looked to the sky and prayed for rain. It is a connection to the quiet ingenuity of the engineers who designed the canals and the terraces. It is a link to the storytellers who wove the myths of the rice mother. You are tasting sunlight and water and soil and time, and the endless, patient, anonymous labor of generations. All of this held in a single humble grain of rice. Each one is a testament to the stubborn, quiet persistence of life, a testament to the simple, profound act of nourishing oneself, an act repeated billions of times a day. Across the globe, a rhythm as steady and reliable as the turning of the earth itself. It is the foundation upon which civilizations were built, the silent fuel for empires, for art, for poetry, for thought. But it began here. With a single seed in a handful of mud, the story ends here. In the steam rising from the bowl, in the quiet aroma that fills the air. There are no more myths to tell, no more historical journeys to trace. The long, winding path has led to this moment of stillness. The work is done. The fields are quiet, and all that remains is peace. Focus now on that scent. It is not a loud or demanding fragrance. It is one of the most subtle, most comforting smells in the human experience. It is the smell of nourishment. It is the smell of simplicity. It smells faintly sweet, like a field of grass after a summer rain. It has a clean, almost mineral quality, the scent of earth and water transformed by warmth into something new. It is the scent of home. For millions of people, it is the fundamental scent of safety, the signal that the day's work is over, that hunger will be satisfied, that for this moment all is well breathed in. Take a slow, gentle breath and imagine you are inhaling that soft, warm steam. Let it fill your lungs. It is the scent of pure potential, of energy waiting to be given. It is a quiet, unassuming fragrance, asking for nothing. And as you breathe out, let go of the day. Let go of the thoughts, the plans, the worries. Let them drift away just like the steam dissipates into the air. Breathe in the quiet, breathe out the noise. There is nothing else to do now, nothing to figure out, nothing to solve. The rice has completed its journey. The farmers are sleeping. The fields are resting under the moon, the water in the paddies reflecting the silent stars. The whole world is settling into a state of quiet repose, and you can settle with it. Feel the warmth of the bed beneath you. Feel the weight of the blanket upon you. A gentle, reassuring pressure. Every muscle in your body can now let go. The muscles in your jaw can soften. Your shoulders can release their burden and sink down. Your hands can lie open and still. The scent of rice is the scent of peace, the promise of replenishment, the knowledge that deep restorative rest is possible. Let that feeling of quiet contentment spread through you. A gentle warmth moving from your chest, down into your arms, down into your legs, all the way to the tips of your fingers and toes. There is only the quiet now, the warmth, the soft, comforting darkness. The story is told, the journey is complete, and now it is time to sleep. Good night, dream of quiet fields. Dream of gentle rain. Drift away now into a deep and peaceful rest.